Good evening, and welcome to the Select Board meeting and the public hearing. It's December 9th, 2025. We have a quorum. Sam couldn't make it, and when Zoom comes up, Chris will be there. Even so, there's three of us here. I'll call the meeting to order. I'll give you a rundown on the recall ordinance. Under the recall ordinance, Section 8, state officials sought to be recalled shall continue to perform the duties of the office until the board certifies the result of the election. Under Section 3 of the Select Board bylaws, the chair shall preside and shall have the authority to rule on questions of evidence and procedures to maintain order and to determine the course of the procedure. This part of the agenda is limited to the recall public hearing. And as chair, I'll lay out the history and process for the recall ordinance as it was crafted over the period between May of 2011 and 2012, June of 2012, I guess. During the meeting, the board considered other town ordinances and thought of their own, and after several meetings, 5 are on the YouTube if someone ever wants to take a look at those. They're now posted. With a detailed discussion, and the town approved the current ordinance. The theme and the intent was clear when one watched the videos of the meetings. On May 10th, 2011, Chair Joe Bruno said it should not be easy to process, an easy process to accomplish, because oftentimes a board has to make tough decisions, so the bar should be set pretty high. There was consensus across the board. The following procedures is what come out of the ordinance. It's laid out as the ordinance. The complaining party requests a recall petition is given a 30-day period to carry around the petition, acquire the needed signatures, the number being 10% of the number who voted in the most recent gubernatorial vote. Like all petitions, during the signature collection, the petitioners has a chance to state the reason and answer the questions as they believe, as the individual, why the individual should be recalled. Once the signatures is collected, the collection portion is complete, timely filed and certified by the town clerk, Melody here. The clerk notifies the elected officials of the 10-day volunteer resignation period, and the timeline to have the public meeting is within 30 days of the petition certification of the clerk. Section 10 speaks to an elected official creating a vacancy if they choose to resign. Next, the Select Board sets the public hearing. The Select Board did so, setting the public hearing for December 2nd. As you know, it snowed. Then by this ordinance, the clerk must post the notice in the same fashions as for any other ordinance. The notice was not posted in the public paper as required, but rather just on the town web and Facebook. We did have to call an emergency public meeting after the scheduled hearing, scheduled in December, was postponed due to the snowstorm. An emergency meeting on Friday the 5th was called for the sole purpose of calling the public hearing and then immediately recessing until tonight. The public ad was then sent in the local paper and was posted 5 days ago this past Friday. The ordinance states the recall election date must be not less than 45 days, nor more than 85 days after the certification. On December 5th, the clerk set the election date for December 30th. At tonight's meeting, we will address the following changes that are listed, that are listed in identical for both officials at the town hall, in order to start and receive the recall petitions and what will be considered as general evidence and concerns. 1, not putting the town's interests first. 2, creating a divisive atmosphere. 3, severe micromanagement. And 4, denigrating employees at a public meeting. There will be no debating between the board and the citizens, just as we do at the end of normal board meetings. The public will be able to state their comments and their positions and then clear the mic for the next speaker. Please wait to be recognized by the chair and state your name and residence clearly. We will start with the officials named in the recall should they wish to speak, as well as my attorney to explain the details of the resulting court ruling that we have received from the town of Limerick recall election, which was stopped by the court judge. For public transparency, both town of Limerick's attorney and the town treasurer's attorney have sent the same opinion explaining why it's illegal to have this to both the town manager board and us attorneys. After that, the next petitioner who states this recall, the petitioner who states this recall process will present her reasons at the time she filed the petition and be asked to focus on the facts and the actual acts and dates that resulted in this action. Because the same 4 charges are stated in both petitions, the presentation should be regarding one petition individual, followed by the second. Upon her completed presentation, others in favor of the petition will have an opportunity to speak and read a statement. Each speaker shall speak, repeat, and shall not repeat what has been already said, but can simply add or state you agree with what's been said, or you may present or add additional facts and comments. Upon this group finishing, the citizen opposed to the petition will speak, beginning with the accused elected officials should we wish to speak, followed by others who oppose the recall, again without repeating the same facts, but may state why they agree or may present new facts or comments. Once this is done, if there's someone here who doesn't really know these issues, are not for or against, they can get up and speak too for a point of interest or clarification. This is not a trial, and no one is expected to answer questions that they have not previous knowledge of what has been presented against them as the reason given were not detailed. At the conclusion, we as a board will speak to the issue in the same manner that we do at a normal board meeting. Each member is entitled to their individual comments, but again, without debate, but can speak to the facts and the view of the matter. This hearing under the recall ordinance does not present an issue that necessarily needs a vote, but the board reserves a right, if the board is so moved to take an action, that would help with the process. This hearing is scheduled as a board meeting. We'll abide by the board's bylaws and Robert's Rule of Order. And I do have the right to speak before and after, but I just soon get started with the process and ask Teresa Sadak to come up and present the reason for starting the petition.
Hi, I'm Teresa Sadak, and I am the one that took out the petitions. I apologize there's not copies, but when I went to make copies tonight, it cost a lot of money. So I am going off of what I have, and I have given Mel a full copy of what I have, and for her to put in as the record. Okay. One of the things, I don't know if the public knows or not, that every board member has to sign a code of ethics. And that's kind of what they go by. And another thing about the boards is you are not allowed to act on your own. You act as a board. That is why it is a board. There's also bylaws. I think it's like 10 pages of bylaws that boards have to follow as a board. Okay, so saying that, there's a lot of violations on all of that. One of the things I did do is I went back and I looked at, Kevin put up the minutes and the board meetings regarding the 2012 original petition to recall. I went through, and the board members on that were Joe Bruno, Charlie Levitt, Lonnie Taylor, Mike Reynolds, and Sam Gifford. And they took quite a few meetings to make sure that they thought about things. They wanted to make it as coherent for the public and everything else. But what they also wanted, and it was stated several times, is they wanted to be able to have the public be able to have recourse to come after the board members if there's something that went wrong. So that will be in there too. Okay, so what I did is, it's not a he said, she said. I went through a lot of emails. I did an FOA and went through a lot of emails. And I had a lot of conversations with staff. I had a lot of conversations with Joe Crocker directly. So what I would start as the first bit of evidence is there was a meeting on October 14th. And it's all listed out here. You're more than welcome to go through it. But the gist of the meeting is we got into a conversation about how Joe was out, and how we were getting Glenn into as an interim town manager. And I'd also like to add in there, this has nothing to do with Glenn at all, as far as a town manager, interim town manager, or anything at all. But in here, I'm sorry, I'm like really nervous and shaking. This is like crazy. All right. Let's start out by saying, I'm going to ask questions. So you're saying that you guys are not going to answer anything. Am I asked that?
Lay it all out.
I'm sorry, what?
You're going to lay it all out. We have no idea what was on. All we have is the reasons you stated in
Right.
this. So lay it all out. We can answer questions when we have our chance to talk.
Okay. So select board employees sent letters. When Joe left, employees sent letters to the select board. And what happened is it was directly to the select board. Did anyone on the select board forward any letters from the staff that were written to the board regarding their concerns about Joe Crocker leaving to Don Willard? That's a yes or a no.
Go ahead and keep going.
Oh, okay. Well,
You're accusing of it. Just keep
I
going
am.
with what
Okay.
you're accusing.
So here it was said no, that nobody did it, but I do have a letter here that Dennis sent to Don Willard on his private email, a letter that Mel wrote directly to him, which is a violation of Mel's rights to talk to you guys as a board. So that's one bit of evidence. The next one would be this whole thing that happened with the church, okay? And during the church, there was an issue that happened down there. And I'm sorry, this is going to jump around from thing to thing because I've got a lot of evidence. So the question would be, what was so wrong with how the church septic issue was handled? And if I back up and explain to the public, there was a backup that septic was coming into the church, and the staff had to clean it. So Riley had contacted Nathan. Nathan went down. They started cleaning it. And what happened is we have a contract, a short-term lease with the church. So with that being said, we use Raymond before and after rec and in there, and we use age friendly in there. So we use the church just like the Boy Scout camp. We use it. And the town has done a lot of work down at the Boy Scout camp because we have a lease underneath and it's fallen underneath the town. So I'd like to know, in the public, what was so wrong with how the church septic issue was handled? I don't believe that was really the issue. I believe the bigger issue is how certain board members handled the situation. In fact, who authorized the chair and the vice chair to go in and have a double team discussion with Joe Crocker regarding that issue? Chris, you can answer too anytime. Was there a plan discussed with Joe about the issue? Was the matter discussed that the town is using the property and it was voted on by select board to do a short-term lease with the building? The building is used for age-friendly and rec before and after care. So if they would not have been able to go in there and clean it up, it would have been some time before anybody else could get in there. At what part of the conversation did the select board members let the conversation get out of control and the shouting started? There was shouting and yells in that room in Joe Crocker's office that the staff heard it outside where they're working, which is totally inappropriate. At what part of the conversation was it appropriate for a board member to say to Joe, there will be consequences for this? And that I have been confirmed directly with Joe Crocker. And Joe has already said to me that I can talk to people about this. Was there any good faith efforts put in by the two board members to work through this disagreement when there shouldn't have been one at all? Did the total select board authorize the select board chair and vice chair to send an email together to the attorney asking about the church and the way it was handled? Board members are not allowed to act on their own. They have to do it as a board. And it seems there's a lot of rogue going on. Why is the board chair asking a public safety member for a copy of the lease between the RVCC and the town of Raymond instead of asking the town manager? Did the board authorize this? Also, it shows that the board chair is not respecting the proper chain of command and going over the town manager. And I don't know if everybody knows in here that the select board, it only has charge of the town manager. That is the employee to the select board. Everybody underneath of it is the town managers. And to go over Joe's head is a disrespect to him. It's a disrespect to the chain of command. It's not following the bylaws, and it's a disrespect to the other board members for not talking to them about this. Oh, and on this, just to prove that I have everything, there is a letter from Don Willard that wrote to Joe, and he was mad about us going onto the property to work on the property because they're not allowed to work on private property. We have a contract with them, just like Boy Scouts. I also have a letter here from Joe Crocker that states what happened during that. We also have a letter from Joe Crocker that says that we were reimbursed all costs, so we didn't lose a dime on that thing, that we got money towards rent, and it was all paid back from the church. But I think the thing that bothers me is we have a town manager that we trust to put in this position, and he writes in here, "Thank you for working together to solve this issue. I am sorry if this caused anyone problems. My intentions have always been to solve issues so we can provide services to the town." It's pretty sad that he's got to apologize for that. We also have, and I'm going full transparency here, we have a letter that was drafted by Kayla to Dennis, and it's a letter to Phil Saucier asking about the whole situation. Did the board at all authorize those two people to do that letter? No? Thanks, Derek. Chris, any answer? No answer, or you didn't authorize them?
Did not authorize it.
Thank you. So meanwhile, we have letters that are going to the attorney that's costing the town money, okay? Then I have an email here from a public safety staff member that said email request. And what happens is, attached to that was, to Dennis, is the cooperation agreement between the RVCC and the town of Raymond. Why didn't you go to the town manager? And why didn't you go to the town manager instead of going through the chain of command and getting it? So once again, that's another couple bylaws, couple code of ethics broken there. Let's see. Why is the select board chair sending requests directly to the attorney's office asking for copies of legal bills when the town manager of finance should already have these? He is asking for all legal bills from 7/1/23 through 7/24 and 7/24 through 8/25. This is an extra expense that the town has to pay for. And the board chair had said at the beginning, I think it was in June or the beginning of July, that he wants to cut back on legal bills as much as possible. He requested these from the town manager on 7/30/25. Did the board authorize this? Chris, did you authorize that?
No.
No. What was the purpose of it? Because here we have a town manager that should have been doing that, not the board chair. Once again, doing without what the other board members say. I have a letter from the attorney's office that says what was requested. So that's another cost that has to be paid out. And I also have the email to Joe Crocker that says on here, and this was sent 8/1/25. The email we got back from the attorney was 8/19. Because he wasn't getting it quick enough. So, a detailed explanation of attorney's fees over the last 2 years and with time, the past 5 years with only the names omitted if necessary for legal reasons. Can't understand about that, but there we go. That's more legal fees to be paid out. I have, on 9/4/25, the select board chair sent 4 pages of questions to the town lawyer. At the end of this email, he states, "We, the board and citizens, ... so we can move forward in a transparent and positive manner. With the board chair and the board vice chair going rogue the way they are, I don't know how this can be transparent and in a positive manner. And I do want to make sure I say that I want to say 98.9% of the letters that Dennis either sent out to somebody or did something, the vice chair was right there on those letters. Not the rest of you guys, though. Okay, so I'd like to know on this letter here, and it's dated September 4th, 2025, and it's 4 pages, mind you. And it says, who is the we on the board? Because you say we. Did you have a meeting with the other board members to discuss sending this letter to the attorney? Chris?
That'd be no.
Derek? Thank you. Who are the citizens? I don't even know who to ask on that one. Did the we in the board authorize you calling the previous finance person the town had and asking if she made certain transactions? You say that in the letter. So you had no right to do that. That undermines the town manager here. It undermines the finance director here, saying that you don't believe her. By making this call, it says that he does not believe what the current finance director is telling him. Did you know that in Trio, you have to put in your initials in order to do transactions? And the initials were there of the previous finance director. Did you know that you are violating the rights of current employees by discussing the situation with somebody else? Did you discuss this with the then town manager, as it was a past employee and should have gone through him? Because even though they're not employees, they still have that right to confidentiality and the privacy. How much is the board chair, vice chair used on legal fees without the rest of the board knowing? You guys probably don't know, huh?
No.
So what I have here is a letter, the 4-page letter that discusses the whole letter to the attorney, Attorney Saucier. So let's see. So one of the things that apparently the board chair and the vice chair had with a discussion with the old town manager, Joe Crocker, was his hours. And that is confirmed through Joe Crocker directly. Joe is receiving criticism for his hours and allowing employees from work from home. These are the questions I have for the board. What was it that was not getting done by Joe not being in the office at 8 a.m.? Specifically, give me an example. No example. Okay. It is my understanding that Joe was in contact with Melissa about this schedule. Where is it written that the town manager has to be at the office at 8 a.m. and not 8:30? He has a very good reason for coming in at 8:30. Why does the select board need job descriptions when that is the town manager's job? The select board is responsible for the town manager, and the town manager is responsible for the employees. Why does the board need descriptions of details regarding the HR person? This would fall under the town manager's jobs. There is a letter that was sent from the chair dated 7/30/25, and the chair goes through a bunch of things on here. And I don't even know if the board even authorized this letter. It goes through quite a lot, and something to do with 5 proposed budget goals, but the letter is attached. The other thing that is attached is the employee personnel in here. Regarding work from home, is the select board saying that the town manager doesn't have the authority to tell an employee they can work from home? Chris? Anything?
No.
Nope. Who authorized and monitored employees when they worked from home during COVID? It was the town manager that did that. And I'm not saying anything bad about it. That was the town manager's job. So there, on that one. All right, and under this, I have the letter, I have the personnel, and I also have the email dated with the 13 things that I'm not even sure if the rest of the board even saw. Joe put in his resignation letter on 9/24. Dennis posted a letter on the town page, 9/29. The select board chair wrote on 10/1, to a reporter, as you may know, when there are personnel issues like this, we are not allowed to discuss it until it is discussed as a board with the person and all parties involved. Then and only then can we discuss it. I can tell you no one on the board wanted to lose Joe for all the reasons his supporters are stating. You put something in there about Joe not leaving because of the reason staying, so you just totally contradict it, and you put a personnel issue. Did you guys meet at all as a board to discuss Joe leaving? Chris?
No.
No. Did you guys get a phone call that Joe resigned? Chris?
I don't recall.
I did not.
Okay. So, did you guys authorize the board chair to put a statement in not even in the paper, on the town website? No?
Not at all. No.
Chris?
No.
Did you guys authorize the town manager to talk about bringing in an interim town manager to give Joe more training, which makes Joe look inadequate as a town manager?
No, I didn't even know. I didn't even see that or know about that until after Joe resigned.
Chris?
I'd agree with that.
Once again, the board chair and vice chair are not to act alone. Was there any emergency meeting at all regarding this when it happened?
What, Joe
No.
resigning?
Joe leaving. Okay. So, how was it appropriate for the board chair to give any of the statement above because he is discussing Joe and the situation? And that is referring to the newspaper letter that a gentleman from the newspaper, which I have here, and he says exactly what I said, that he can tell that no one on the board wanted to lose Joe for all the reasons his supporters are stating. How was it appropriate for the board chair to give any of the statement above? Yep, sorry, I just read that one. Did the chair or vice chair communicate with the other members of the select board about Joe resigning? That was a big no from both. Did the board authorize the chair to put out a notice or a statement? That was a no. Did the board authorize the chair, vice chair to call 3 other town managers plus Glenn to discuss Joe Crocker? Mark Green, Steve Eldridge, Tim Pellerin, and Glenn. You're talking about a personnel issue, and you're calling other town managers about them. And it's in an email. So it's not anything I'm making up here. It's all proof. How is it okay for the chair to put out a statement stating that ... to devise a transition plan that included being mentored by an interim town manager when it is a personnel issue? So you are saying that you're going to bring in an interim town manager, have Joe mentored, and then bring him back in. Chris, did you know anything about that?
No.
Derek? Thank
No,
you.
I don't know why the town manager would kind of be demoted down to assistant to go back up to the original position. None of that really made
Right.
sense to me when I read it.
And also to have that put out there publicly. That is absolutely embarrassing for anybody to have their work and stuff like that put out there. So in here, I have the letter from, I think his name is Rory Sweeting, which I think he's here. Yes, I did recognize you. Sorry. And this is the whole letter that Dennis had sent out. And that he puts in here, I have been talking with town managers Mark Green, Steve Eldridge, Tim Pellerin, and Glenn. It's right from Dennis, right here. Glenn, again, this is nothing against you. I mean, I'm trying to stick with the main stuff here. Executive sessions are confidential, correct? You guys would say that, right? Okay. So
Absolutely.
in executive sessions, if it's a personnel issue, the person that's being talked about either should have a right to be in there, or it usually comes from the town manager. In an email dated 8/12/25, the board chair asked for an executive session regarding a personnel matter. If this was a personnel matter, as the agenda states, why was the chair of the Budget Finance Committee in this executive session? Am I correct? Chris? Was there somebody else in an executive session regarding personnel matter?
I can't comment on that.
Mistakes happen.
Anyways, so what happens is I didn't hear it. I saw it because I was out back sitting because I was worried about Joe because the stuff that he was being attacked for. I sat. I waited. You guys went into an executive session. You came out of executive session. And there was nobody else here, and all walked out together. Whose rights were violated by the chair being in this executive session is what I'd like to know, because I'm lucky you haven't been sued for it. So here's the agenda that was set. Here is the letter that Dennis talks about, filing an executive session at the end of the meeting. I'll send the actual state 30A reference number once I speak with other members on issues. And there's a lot of illegal meetings going on behind the scenes through emails. If you got 3 people in an email trail, that's an illegal meeting. I'm telling you guys now, there is a bunch of it going on. All you have to do is FOIA it. One of the issues that we've had is the denigrating of public employees. So I guess I'd like to ask, how is this not denigrating the employees? Putting on the website, you are offering Joe, then current town manager, mentoring by an interim town manager for a couple of months to get mentored with the hopes of having him come back later. Isn't a demotion? He was already being mentored by a town manager down in Wells. So I guess that one wasn't good enough down there. Sending an email to one employee and degrading another current employee. I have a letter here to, I'm gonna put it out there, Stephanie. I would like you to know how much you are appreciated. I understand you came in on Monday, your normal day off, and it did not go unnoticed. It was not uncommon to see this extra effort in the past from previous employees when a committee or board needed information or a job needed to get done. So you are pitting one employee against the other and putting them down. And you also went to that employee when you should have gone to the town manager. Calling other town managers and discussing Joe. Questioning Melanie as to whether she did her job correctly or not about the recall notice. And that came after Glenn had said, go through him. And you still sent it. And you made a comment in one of the emails that said you don't feel like you crossed the line by doing that. Having the vice chair go to Joe Crocker and tell him that the email that the finance director sent to the chair and vice chair was outrageous and inappropriate. Brenda was trying to reach out to you guys, talk to you guys, and you go in and tell her it's inappropriate when it was very polite, actually. And you guys don't know any of that, right? About any letters? Probably not. Having the chair or vice chair go into Joe Crocker's office, confronting him, and then having loud yelling voices coming from that office overheard by staff. How is that not denigrating to everybody? Because it's a lack of respect of their boss. Where is the respect factor for working through any issues? There's no good faith negotiations, working through a problem, whatever. Did the board even know that the chair and vice chair was going to have conversations with Joe? Did you know that they were going to go in and talk to him, apparently about the church issue?
No.
Chris?
No.
So again, a double team, mind you, 2 of them. Sending an email from an employee that was sent out of concern to the select board and having the chair send the emails to Don Willard at his personal email address. That is a slap in the face. Sorry, Mel. So I have here the letters that have gone out about Dennis going public, about talking to different town managers, about putting in there that he's going to be interimed, the letter to Stephanie, also the email to Mel, and the letter that Brenda wrote to the board. Sorry. Did the select board as a whole discuss the issues that the chair and the vice chair brought up in the meeting with Joe that were big issues with those 2? I had a direct conversation with Joe Crocker, and I've asked him, and I can show you the emails. He has given me total, complete permission to do this. He said there was 4 issues. The church issue, where the vice chair said there will be consequences for these. The other one was not getting to work at 8 o'clock. Lack of communication and people working remotely. Derek, did you know that they were going to go discuss those issues?
No.
You said talk about a board about it?
No.
Chris?
No.
Thank you. Did the vice chair threaten Joe with consequences in that they were going to get the lawyers involved and put the church issue back on the agenda for the select board? Did you guys know that?
No.
No.
Did the whole board authorize any of these discussions that were being double teamed on Joe?
No.
I didn't know about them.
That's the meeting. I have 14 letters from citizens in the town that went to him. I only have probably, I want to say, 2 that had responses. And unfortunately, one of the responses said, he blames the previous admin. We are currently experiencing some issues with getting timely financial information from our department due to complications from previous administration's short staffing and individuals learning the booking system called Trio. I don't think that's information that should have gone regarding concerns regarding Joe leaving. Once again, I'd like to remind everybody in here. Hold on a second. Sorry. Did the vice chair walk into the town manager's office and just sit in his office quietly, or walk around the town office and looking in office? There was a situation that happened because he got it directly from Joe. Vice chair walks into Joe's office, sits down, doesn't say anything. Joe says, "Can I help you with anything?" No. Vice chair says, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Joe says no. He then asks the vice chair if she wants to work with him on coming up with some subcommittees. Vice chair says, "No, you can do that." What was the purpose of that meeting? Was it to intimidate him? Was it to bully him? I don't understand this. And I guess, who authorized it? Regarding all the questions regarding finances, did any of the board members go and make appointments with Brenda and talk through the questions that were out there? Derek?
Which questions?
Any kind of financial questions that are going on, because there's a lot of questions that are reverting back to the previous select board. No. So, with that, I want to just remind people again that there are code of ethics laws and there are bylaws. And I want to, I guess, end this thing with something pretty sad. Joe put in his resignation. It wasn't good enough. So Dennis, the chair, asked him to rewrite it. And it says here, attaches the resignation letter in draft form. Let me know if that is good enough to send out to the select board members. That's absolutely disgusting. The other thing about it is, Joe could have blasted the town as he was leaving. And there's an email here from Ed Pierce at the Wyndham Eagle. And he starts talking to him about writing this. And he asks in here, is there anything you'd like to express or say to the community, or anything else you want to tell me that I can include in my article? And Joe says, that is a loaded question. Joe says, I have always appreciated how you write the news to provide a positive view on our town. This is complicated, and I do not want to shed a bad light on the town of Raymond. When you provide services to a small town for so long, they become your friends. So no matter what, no matter how much he was kicked, bullied, intimidated, micromanaged, criticized, and even put that in the Press Herald, he still had a lot of respect for the people of Raymond, his friends, and the work and stuff that was done here. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on support would like to get up there?
Hello, my name is Shar Jewell. I have been reviewing everything and talking to people and reviewing evidence and having conversations with first-hand accounts and not just third and fourth-hand accounts because, you know, when you ever did the telephone game, right, things change over time. So I made sure that I got first-hand accounts of things that have been happening over the last several months. And, you know, there's a couple of ways I'm looking at the situation. One, I have been a human resources professional for over 30 years. And for all of us in this room, you're probably an employee today. And if you're not today, then you were at one point, right? And the last thing you want is your boss's boss to come in to your office or to your workplace or your work environment and speak negatively to you, especially unprofessionally with a negative message. In any workplace, there is a chain of command. And if someone has an issue with an employee and the way they're functioning in their position, and you're in senior management, you then go to their direct manager to address the issues and have them manage the employee that you perceive as having negative performance. That is something that myself as an HR professional, I have mandated that amongst my management and supervisor that I've coached over the years. It's something that we as employees expect. It's professional. It's a sign of respect. And if you don't treat your employees like that, then why do you have employees? If you think you can do the job better, then just do it yourself. So from an HR perspective, some of the things I've heard has been outright, just outrageous, frankly. Second, about how some members of the board have operated in their positions. I'm looking at it from a former RSU 14 board member for 4 years. And one thing that was made very, very clear is that we have a code of ethics and we have bylaws and we have very strict regulations on how we're able to operate as board members. Never, ever was it appropriate for a board member to go directly to a member of staff with anything negative. You know, you want to call them and say, hey, great job. Fine. Anything negative? Absolutely not. Must be addressed with the superintendent as a board in an executive session. It is up to the superintendent to address whatever the board perceives as negative performance. Period. End of story. If the board's not happy with the superintendent, then they need to deal with the superintendent directly because that is their employee. Everyone else that works for the RSU works for the superintendent, not the board. It is the same setup for the town of Raymond. Town employees do not work for the board directly. The only employee that the board has is the town manager. If they feel that town employees are not doing their jobs correctly, the town manager has to address it. If the board feels that it's not being addressed appropriately, they need to address that with the town manager. So with that being said, it does appear that for some reason, not long after Joe took the position, the board lost confidence in his ability. Frankly, as a uninformed citizen, when I heard that he was being promoted to this job, it surprised the heck out of me. I'm like, we're hiring somebody that's never been a town manager before to be town manager, not even assistant town manager. What are we doing? And I thought, well, he must have been around towns long enough to know what to do or smart enough to figure it out. And based on what I've learned over the last few months, he was smart enough to figure it out. And, you know, the issue with the church, I'm like, come on, guys. We're chasing pennies to drop dollars. It's ridiculous to hang somebody out to dry for making a heat of the moment management decision. In my business, we do it every single day. We make heat of the moment decisions, something that is pressed for time. And if a manager makes a bad decision, then we address it and as a senior management level and say, we feel you made a poor decision, and then coach them to make sure it doesn't happen again. And it's where it had no negative effect on the town, financially anyway, and it was a good outcome for the rec program. I really don't see how that was blown out of proportion so badly. But Just to go back to my experience with the RSU, there are very strict laws, ethics, regulations about how our board functions, and it is obvious that various items were infracted upon, broken for weeks and months at a time that the other board members didn't even have the luxury of knowing about, which is just abhorrent. If the RSU 14 board acted like that, there'd be riots in the street considering how people feel about the budget. But anyway, that's a side note. So I appreciate the time to speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Dennis Frappier. I live in Raymond. I wanted to thank Dennis Morse, and I don't know Kayla, for selflessly serving and trying to uncover the improprieties that are going on around here. The reason I voted for him is because I'm tired of professional politicians, people who are there acting like politicians with too much power and too much desire for gain. So I want to thank him. I haven't heard of anything that's illegal or which would be a reason for recall on this.
Dennis, there may be someone else who wants to speak in favor. We want everyone to speak in favor first. Appreciate
In favor of what?
of this recall.
Well, there's no reason for it. Everyone's wasting their time, in my opinion. Thanks for
Sorry. Anyone else in favor of the recall? Hearing none.
Hold on, thank you. I have letters that have been given to me to read into the record tonight from people who could not be here. Can you get the microphone? Yep. All right, the first one is signed from concerned staff and citizens of the town of Raymond. It is titled, "A Letter of No Confidence in the Select Board Chair by Dennis Morse and Vice Chair Kayla Gonzalez. To all Raymond residents, we, the concerned residents of Raymond, as well as town staff, are writing to formally express our collective vote of no confidence in the leadership of the Select Board Chair Dennis Morse and Vice Chair Kayla Gonzalez. Town government functions best when built on mutual respect, transparency, accountability, and an unwavering commitment to the public good. Unfortunately, recent actions and behavior by Mr. Morse and Mrs. Gonzalez have severely undermined those core principles, creating an atmosphere of mistrust and dysfunction within both the town administration and the wider community. We outline our concerns as follows. Number 1, unjust treatment of the town manager and other town directors. Chair Morse and Vice Chair Gonzalez have consistently shown undue hostility and disrespect toward the town manager. Rather than providing constructive oversight, they have chosen to publicly and privately undermine the town manager's role, eroding both internal leadership and communication with the board. Chair Morse has participated in and allowed public ridicule and contemptuous behavior by elected committee members towards town staff, seemingly with the intent to undermine their professionalism and to damage their reputations. Number 2, lack of transparency. Critical decisions and discussions are taking place outside of public meetings in direct conflict with the spirit of open government. This behavior limits public awareness, reduces accountability, and violates the trust placed in elected officials. Number 3, conflict of interest. The personal relationship between the chair and vice chair has created a troubling imbalance of power. Their coordinated actions suggest a shared agenda that puts personal priorities above the needs of the town and its residents, blurring the lines of professional governance and compromising the checks and balances as well as the town's chain of command. Number 4, use of power to advance personal agendas. Rather than acting on behalf of the entire community, the chair and vice chair appear to be using their authority to serve the interests of a small group of individuals motivated by grievances from previous leadership decisions. This behavior is retaliatory in nature and does not reflect the will or the needs of the broader community. Number 5, disregard for community voice. Instead of listening to diverse perspectives across the town or employees who work on the day-to-day operations, the chair and vice chair have chosen to prioritize a narrow and vocal minority. This has alienated the town manager as well as some long-standing residents and employees and undermines the democratic process. Number 6, decline in employee morale. The atmosphere at the town office has deteriorated significantly since the resignation of Joseph Crocker. Staff morale is at an all-time low. Dedicated employees are now considering resignation due to an unsupportive, politicized, and stressful work environment. As both residents and employees, we care deeply about our local government and the well-being of our community. We believe that the continued leadership of Mr. Morse and Mrs. Gonzalez poses a threat to both. This letter serves as a formal call for accountability, change, and a return to principled, transparent, and respectful governance. We urge the remaining members of the Select Board and the broader public to take these concerns seriously and to initiate appropriate steps towards addressing the current leadership crisis. Thank you. I have another one from Joe Crocker, who could not attend tonight. He writes, I am writing in response to requests for evidence or explanation regarding my decision to resign from the position of town manager. It is not my intention to sling mud or create divisiveness within our community. My goal has always been to help build a place where, despite our differences, we can find common ground in what makes a town like Raymond such a special place to live. However, I do feel obligated to provide more context than I have previously shared because I want to ensure that the people I respect and have worked with do not experience this situation again. There are certain details I cannot divulge, and I am currently consulting with the town on projects that are still in process. There was a timeline of events that should have aligned the Budget Finance Committee and the Select Board and the town employees towards a common goal, moving forward and improving our town together. Unfortunately, that alignment did not occur, which ultimately led to my resignation. April of 2025, a meeting was held between the Budget Finance Committee, Select Board, and Finance Department to review the management letter for the audit on fiscal year 24. Our finance director developed a plan to address the identified issues and to begin implementing new procedures. June of 25, the town began working with Town Cloud Municipal Software, implementing its agenda management, website, and communication modules. This was an important step towards consolidating multiple software systems into one platform, which would improve financial accounting practices, reporting, and other operations. This was going to be a huge collective effort on our staff to pivot in this direction. July of 25. I established a target date that would provide sufficient time to demonstrate progress on the plan that had been set in motion. During this period and up to the time of my resignation, the Budget Finance Committee and Select Board members and some Select Board members continued to request reports they knew could not easily be produced with our existing software and circumstances. Additional reports and presentations were often requested with short deadlines. Many of these required significant preparation, including researching previous administrative work or manually compiling data using the software that we had available. With day-to-day operations being our primary focus outside of budget season, it was challenging for staff to revisit prior fiscal years while also maintaining current responsibilities and implementing new procedures. All of this would have been manageable had there been a genuine desire to understand the information being requested. However, based on certain actions and attitudes directed towards staff and myself, I do not believe the intention was to move us in a positive direction, but rather to discredit our efforts during public meetings and hinder the progress we were making. The constant questioning of my decisions, the pressure placed on staff by town officials, and the unwillingness to listen to the rationale behind our collective approach are the reasons I chose to resign. And one more. Dear members of the community, I regret that I cannot attend tonight's meeting as I have a commitment with my daughter that I cannot miss. My name is Melissa McConkey. I am both a Raymond resident and the executive assistant to the town manager, a role that I've held for just over 4 years. In that time, I have supported 4 town managers. Speaking publicly about our work experience puts employees in a difficult position. There's always a risk of retaliation or of saying too much, but I also believe honesty is necessary, especially now. I want to give brief context. I had a good working relationship with former town manager Don Willard, and we remained amicable even after his retirement until recently. When Joe Crocker began his first week as interim town manager, Mr. Willard came into town hall to speak with him. While waiting, he told me that he planned to advise Joe not to apply for the position, and that if he did, he would, quote, have a hard time, end quote. Looking back, that moment was the first sign of what was ahead. There has been a narrative that Joe resigned simply to spend more time with family. While that may have been part of it, those of us who worked closely with him know it went much deeper. The truth is that Joe faced obstacles from the start, obstacles unrelated to his ability or dedication. Chair Morse campaigned on transparency, respect for staff, and adherence to ordinances. In his published thank you letter after his election, he stated that June 11th, 2024 marked a, quote, a new normal, end quote, where citizens could once again participate in shaping the town. But since the June 2025 election, when he became chair and Mrs. Gonzalez became vice chair, things have been far from transparent or normal. While their conduct during public meetings appeared respectful, it was the day-to-day behavior behind the scenes that contributed to Joe's resignation. There was a personal closeness between Mr. Willard, Chair Morse, and Vice Chair Gonzalez that I believe is relevant. Whether motivated by personal loyalty to Mr. Willard or something else, it was clear from day one that they would not support Joe. Chair Morse frequently assigned Joe and his administrative team extensive tasks, requests for reports, analyses, and historical information unrelated to Joe's tenure. These projects took hours, sometimes days, and were often dismissed or misunderstood. I also witnessed an interaction between Vice Chair Gonzalez and Joe one Friday afternoon. She arrived unannounced and questioned him aggressively about an email response that she felt, quote, didn't sound like him. When he explained that he drafted his thoughts and then used an AI program to clean up the formatting, a tool many professionals used, she repeatedly told him that it was her professional opinion that he should not use it. When he explained that he was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of email inquiries and questions, she responded, quote, do you think you're the only person to ever be overwhelmed in this position, end quote. She also questioned why he worked from home on Mondays, town hall is closed, while she herself left the conversation to return home to continue working remotely. The conversation had no constructive purpose. It felt intended only to make his job harder and to catch him in the moment. After Joe resigned, I wrote a letter to the entire select board expressing my concerns and support for him. That letter was never read publicly, yet Mr. Willard somehow knew I was upset. Once he learned of the recall petition, he called my personal phone. When I didn't respond, he came into the town hall to talk. The only way he could have known about my letters was through the chair or vice chair. That breach of trust is unsettling. These are only the incidents I witnessed firsthand. This may seem small on their own, but together they reflect a clear pattern. These experiences, along with others that are not mine to share, have created a workplace where staff feel constantly on edge, worried about being singled out next, worried about being blamed, and worried about becoming a target. Employees are exhausted by the ongoing turmoil and are simply trying to do their jobs in an environment that feels increasingly unstable. We want leadership that supports the work we do and allows us to move forward. I do not know Mr. Morse or Mrs. Gonzalez personally, but based on what I have seen and experienced, I believe they should step down from their roles as chair and vice chair. At the very least, they owe this community honesty about their intentions. It is difficult to reconcile their public platform of transparency with actions that suggest otherwise. And it remains unclear why they were so opposed to Joe Crocker serving as town manager. If the chair and vice chair choose not to step down on their own, my hope is that the community will consider what is best for the future of our town and the employees who serve it every day. We need stability, trust, and leadership that reflects the values this community deserves. Thank you for listening, and thank you to everyone who continues to care about the well-being of our town and employees. Melissa McConkey.
Sue?
My name is Suzanne Carr, 61 Spiller Hill, and I also work for the town. Dennis, when you campaigned to be on this board, you basically had your agenda. You wanted Joe Bruno off the board, and you went around putting him down. You also did not want Public Works to get their garage, so you put that out too as being bad. So both of those went through. Then you got together with Don Willard and got Sue Look, the town manager, out of there by doing the same thing you did to Joe. You just kept going in her office, and no matter what she did it wrong. Then you went after Brenda, who is the finance director. You went after her, blaming her for what took place in '24. She was not working for us in '24. We closed the books in June. She came in July or August of '24. So every question you asked her, she couldn't respond to it except for look at it and kind of guess what might have happened. And as was said, Don Willard did come in and tell Joe not to apply. Also, when Don Willard gave his resignation, the Budget Finance emailed everybody on the Budget Finance Committee and Dennis and Kayla. The rest of the board were not told that Don Willard had resigned. Now you threaten to sue the town if we go along with this election. You are not there for the town. You are there for your agenda. Who's next that's gonna go? Is it Brenda or is it Nathan, who we all know you're against? Or is it me now that I've stood up here and spoke to you? I have 20 months left. Come on, bring it on. Emailing employees by you or Kayla is not correct. And as for the budget email to only the chair and co-chair is not correct. It should have gone out to everybody who was concerned. And if I had been the one to put this petition up for resignation, there would have been more people on that list from the Budget Finance. Watch some of those meetings and see how they treated us employees. They put Brenda down really bad, made her look like she didn't know what she was doing. And by the way, she used to be a town manager, so she had her skills right there for Joe to be mentored by. But that wasn't good enough for you. No, you wanted Joe out, and that's exactly what you got. We heard it all through those closed doors between you and Kayla. It's pretty sad when customers are coming in the door and they can hear yelling in the back, or they go to the back for the codes and they can hear it, or assessing and they can hear it. How great is that for the town? Woo-hoo! We're a great town, aren't we, Dennis?
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, I guess I get to say what I want to say. We'll start with Joe Crocker. He was voted to be interim town manager. I voted for him. I had concerns, so I had lunch with him on May 14th. I invited him to go out to a place in Naples to talk about how much work was going to have to be done. We had a town manager who walked away in the middle of March, in the middle of the budget process, in a mess. No one wants to talk about what a mess it was because it's negative and we don't want to talk about it, and we had Joe to come in as interim town manager. So we talked for 2 hours and about many things, from the time and effort it was going to take to fix the things that went on, to the mess that happened when we lost 2 town managers, 3 department heads, 2 other employees, for a total of 7 people. The reality is the whole staff, from the head of code, head of finance, assistant to the finance, library director, Don Willard, who'd been here 23 years, and then the clerk took over. And the clerk, after, just so people know, 2 weeks after she was interim town manager, she called the finance director into her office, where her and the chairman of the board explained to her how it was going to be. I think it was July 18th, if I remember my notes, and basically said Don Willard wasn't coming back. And that was July 18th. And I have many more notes with that regards. In fact, from the beginning of her interim term, town manager, she met with code officers, fire department officials, public works, and as I said, finance department, with the town manager. I'm not sure that the whole select board knew about that. I'm not sure what went on, but I will tell you there was chaos, and people started leaving. And the hostile environment they talk about now was nothing compared to what it was then. We actually had people leave rather than talk about it. Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I will tell you that there's a lot of things that went on. And Joe was a department head. He knew about this stuff. And I did talk about some of this stuff at the meeting. And I told him I was worried. I said, Joe, you're the one that's going to be cleaning it up. And if you think it's going to be easy, take a look at some of those budget meetings that we just went through. Think about what you're getting into. And he assured me he could do it, and we talked a little bit more. And I told him, you won't have the flex hours that you had as Public Works Director. It's going to be a lot of work, a lot of work. And just so you know, we haven't had an expense and revenue sheet to evaluate where the town stood for 6 months or maybe 9 months at the time, and the Budget Committee was constantly calling for them, And there's a state law I could read here that I have got to read, that I've got here in the notes, that basically says we have to do a review of the finance of the town at least every quarter. Now, I don't know whether Chris remembers, but he told me how bad it was for his department, trying to even figure out what was going on. And if it was one thing he was upset about, was that. So when you are, whether on the Budget Committee or on the Select Board, and you say what's going on, that's considered a criticism. And when I did get that letter from Brenda, and Kayla and I got it, we told Joe we can't go talk to her. She's a department head. She's your person, not mine. Just ask her who says the rumors. Let me deal with the rumors. I don't know what they are. Rumors are saying we're criticizing her. Mine have always been straight up. Where are the expense and revenue sheets? We never had a problem with this before. Actually, January of 24, Teresa Sadek sent an email to Cerise, who was the finance director, and said, am I missing the monthly statements? Have I been eliminated, or are you just not doing them? And Cerise said they've been busy and sent them out. We used to get them monthly. And when you didn't, someone raised the issue. So the reality is, we haven't done a quarterly review of the finance until Glenn started, and I said, I don't really care one way or the other about anything except getting our butt covered for the Select Board. We should be able to review this every quarter, and we hadn't. So by the time we wound down this meeting, he said, you know, I really do feel I can do it, even though I know it's going to spend a lot of time. And then he looked at me straight in the face and he said, do you think they're setting me up for failure? And I said, no, not you, Joe. the Select Board. I think they're setting us up to failure. They like you, just like we like you. So that was May. That was May. And then July, we did talk about a lot of stuff. And that 14 things we asked were all kinds of things that we'd asked during the budget process. You know, things like CIP. I asked Joe about the RFP for doing the pickleball court in Tasseltop, and he said they did an request for a proposal. They used Owen, who's a Sebago Technic guy that's really good. We used him for our public safety building. He's excellent. So I assumed they had it. I never got it. There are the lawyer fees. I asked for that. That was a phone call to the firm to ask. That was asked by the budget committee. That was asked by myself when I first got on the select board. So I called myself. You know, subcontractors, we have a right to have communications with. They're not employees. I'm allowed to do it. I'm allowed to call when I'm looking for options, when I'm looking for answers. Those aren't decisions the select board has to make. That's what you have leadership for. So in July, I asked for the lease, and we talked about an incinerator, $66,000 that we had to pay for an incinerator, and you know, actually that was in June, but I brought it back up in July. I actually told him in June, if that bill is owed, I'd just recommend you try to get it in the 23-24 budget, because this budget right now you're going to own, Joe. So if you can get the $66,000 paid out of the other budget, that won't be over your head. We've already got an issue with $40,000 that was supposed to go into CIP for the reevaluation. So that's $106,000 we're already behind. And the reality is there's more things like that that's been going on. You know, we hadn't even got into it. And so I was being honest with him in every fashion. July 11th, let's see, I've got a couple of things here. Either the 11th or the 19th. Chris Hansen called me and said that I think it's actually the 14th. I've got notes I had to go back and dig up to find out, but Chris called me and said that Joe had gone home with a stomachache and he was talking about resigning. And I said, hey, I'll go in Monday and see him and talk to him and talk him off the ledge. I went in and talked to him, found out what was going on, and he was really frustrated. There was two things he really wanted to get done for us right off quick, and that was the agenda, which he and Mel worked on, and they got it done in a hurry. And then the other thing he wanted to do was fix the web. And actually, Bill and I talked to him after one of the first select board meetings and said, boy, people cannot use the web. So he made it his point to do it. He was going to try to work with it. I actually thought he'd give it to Kevin, our IT person, but he took it on himself. Anyway, when I went in, I said, what's going on? You look awful. And he said, oh, I had a rough weekend. I said, yeah, Chris told me. Anyway, he says, you know, every time I go to work on the web page, the phone rings or someone comes in here. I can't get anything done. And it's really frustrating. And there's so much stuff going on in this town. And this is a quote. I don't have enough fingers to fill the holes in a boat. That's in July. You know, this isn't in September. And I started saying to him, I told you there's going to be a mess. We can get through it. All we have to do is keep pushing through. We've got to get some answers. But also, Joe, I really want some expense in revenue. I want to see where we are in the town. Who's going to be liable if we don't get these things? And you could see what's going on. And anyway, the feeling I thought I was hearing from him is maybe second thoughts or whatever. And he didn't want to work Mondays. That's true. He said he didn't want to work Mondays. And I said, you know, Sue worked Mondays. Don worked Mondays. It sets an example. You know, you work Monday through Friday when you're right behind, and you just said you can't get the web done because the phone rings or someone walks in all the time. If you work Mondays, that's when everyone gets things done. The past finance director used to come in and work Mondays all the time to get caught up. Kathy's been in there working. The assistant was being there working. It's not uncommon for people to work. But it has become uncommon, which is why I sent a comment, my comments to Stephanie. She's in there working away on a Monday to get things done. I thought she deserved a compliment. I heard someone say that's what we're supposed to do, and then criticize me because I reached out with it.
She did it Friday. Friday off.
Hey, you're out of line. You had your chance, please. So I'm going to give my story the way I saw it and what he said to me. I actually admired Joe, and I liked everything that everyone else liked about Joe. And probably maybe I was tough on him because I had high expectations. And I'm guilty of high expectations. That's what I expect. You know, we had a mess. People don't realize what a mess we had with Sue as the town manager and the things that went on behind the scenes that I'm accused of. I called up the lawyers to get answers on something someone asked me in here about whether Public Works, how much Public Works or the town does for Tasseltop. You know, I thought that was a legitimate question. So I raised the issue and said, is it appropriate for an enterprise account for Public Works to be down there? That was the question. And it came back that anything that they do, the response from the lawyer was, should be in a warrant. It should be understood. For example, the one warrant they have is that if there's an emergency situation, Public Works can deviate from what they do on a normal day and plow a road in an emergency situation. It's black and white. Phil told me that if we want to add that in there, we want to talk about doing that sort of thing, we put it in the warrant. So a week after we get the response, Public Works goes down to the church for a plugged sewer line. I didn't know anything about it until Chris sent me pictures of it and actually called it a big dig, which it was a big, huge hole. It was a plugged sewer line. I take care of properties. All 3 times I called Zoom Drain Cleaner. About a route has been bought up by them. They come in an hour, 2 hours, they'll tell you where the thing is, and they can grind up a route or grind up whatever it is, and it's ready to go. We don't have to dig up the hole, and that's all I said to Joe when I got in there for that meeting. I said, first of all, we just got a ruling from the lawyer that they should get a description if they're going to get off. Secondly, it was private property. The other thing the lawyer said is, did you check with your insurance company? Did you take safety precautions? I said, no, his report said NA for dig safe. So there was concerns we had for liability. And yes, we were upset. But I'll tell you something. I give Joe a lot of credit. He said, I take full responsibility. I'm a solution guy. There was a plug drain, and Nathan put the sensor down there to find out where it was and dug the hole up. He takes care of all of our buildings. Were we a little upset? Of course we were. You know, I mean, it's a liability. There was a hole the size of an excavator could sit in for 4 days, from Wednesday or Thursday to Monday or Tuesday. And they didn't just unplug the thing. They did tank extensions and some other things. And on top of it, all I really wanted from Joe was communication. It started Wednesday, and we didn't know about it until Monday when I got the pictures from Chris. So as far as the septic system goes, we don't get on private property to do work for anyone. They could have gotten toilets. They could have used the Zoom cleaner. There was other solutions. But that's neither here nor there. And yes, I did say, I'm going to get a ruling from the lawyer. I'd like to get a report from Nathan and send it to the lawyer and see if we can find a soft way out of this. And that's exactly what I said to Phil. Just give us a soft way out of this and what we should do. And he did. He said it wasn't a lease, it was an agreement. And at this stage, you know, things had gone bad. By the time we got the ruling back, the church had come and gone, and Joe had resigned. That was on the 24th, but the 14th, the 21st, we met to go over things that we could. Joe and I met. And by the way, I met, I think, 3 Mondays, and I may have gone in the office 2 other times on my own, and he called me in 3 times. Once when Mel and he got the agenda done, and I praised him and said, great job, this is the kind of stuff we need to do, and that's how it ended. You know, that was, and they did a great job. I didn't realize he was going to try to do the web page all on his own. I figured he'd get basically Kevin to do it. And I also didn't know that he didn't like to delegate. He wanted to do it all himself. All the things we asked about the finance were questions the Budget Committee asked and the Select Board had asked. And if anyone did watch those Budget Committee meetings, you would know that the Budget Committee and the Select Board were told that we basically were voting on a 4.5% budget. And in reality, there was $300,000 that was put into that budget process that had never been done before on utilizing Article 11, which is what we use to do a tax rate reduction or set the tax rate. And that's how the wording is. It doesn't say we can use it for anything else. And the $75,000 that was also in that budget process is something the Select Board has for unexpected issues. It wasn't just to be put in there to lower the tax rate or anything else. And the fact that it was used in the 23 and 24 budget, which came out in the August meeting, was atrocious. It was not the way it was supposed to do. And not only that, I went in to see him the day before the meeting, and I said, Joe, please have Brenda there. Have the finance director there. She's going to know more about what's going on here. She's the one that did the printout. And what they did is they took the printout, cut and paste from the actual audit report that was done and put in April. The town got the audit done in April. We asked twice for it, and we got it in September. A year before, Chair Olson asked the treasurer, the finance director, if there was going to be any issues at all with overruns. And the comments were made, no, there's plenty there. We shouldn't have any issues at all. And then we find out a year later that $250,000, $175,000 from, quote unquote, the Article 11 and $75,000 from the Select Board were done publicly. It wasn't done publicly. There's no public vote, even though it was stated and it was verbally said that. And so when you start to put that whole picture together, and you've got someone who really took blame for everything. I mean, he literally took responsibility for everything we asked him for. How can you not respect him? How can you not like him? So when he told us the next day, he called me up and said, can you stop by? Text me, basically. And I said, can I call you? Text me back, said, no, I need to talk to you. I said, oh, boy. I stopped by just after lunch, September 24th. He sat down, he slid over the resignation, and I said, Joe, this isn't what we want. What we want to do is get through this heap, get all this stuff straightened around, and then we want someone who smiles and has your attitude here for the town for a long time, like Don Willard was here. You're young, you can do this. And the reality is, I thought that when I talked to him, he got what I was talking about. And I said, you know how much stuff is going on. You can't get this one thing done because of phone and everything else, and we still got and I listed it. I told him what we had else to do. And I asked him, why don't we just use the assistant to the town manager's funds that are in the budget, get someone over here, either I used Glenn and Steve Eldridge, those are the only two I mentioned, that I'd reach out to, talk to Betsy, get it all lined out, and we'll reach out to a couple of people. And if Glenn still has an interest in coming to Raymond, maybe it can work because he's been through the process. If not, maybe Steve Eldridge can because he does interim work. He smiled, he thanked me, we shook hands, and he said, what would you like? I said, just write it some way so that you're going to hang around, you're going to help us, and you will take over. And so I actually have the letter that on the 28th that I received and the town manager received, or Betsy, from Glenn, basically outlining that he was willing to come in for a year as interim, work with Joe, step down, and let Joe take over if that's what the town select board and Joe wanted. He was the most considerate, kind person I'd ever dealt with. I said, Glenn, I really appreciate this, and everything has to go before the select board, and he did. He said, you'll have to talk to the select board and the town manager, and if you want, I'll call Glenn. I'll meet with Joe Friday. This wasn't to undermine Joe. This was actually to try to survive and get him through. It's still a mess, by the way. We still got all these committees that have to be up and functioning, and we've got to find the funds for that after having a 12.5 or 12.3% budget increase. And the $1.5 million for the school isn't going away. And the reassessment's coming on board. So you put all this stuff together, everything that's gone on, I really believe that he knew the time it was going to take, and that's what he said. I don't have the time. I want to coach my daughter. I want to have more time with the family, and I don't see that happening with everything we got going on. The solution was to bring someone in, not to belittle him. But what happened, timetable-wise, is 2:30, he sent the letter that he did amend by my request, that he was willing to stay on, and he explained that we had a conversation, and that he was willing to spend the time and actually work through the process, and if there was a position for him, he would gladly stay. That was at 2:30. What I didn't know, and perhaps I was naive, that at 3:48, the same day, he sent out a different email to the staff just saying he would be, basically he'd stay on as long as he could help the transition to a new town manager, but he'd be leaving. There was nothing about staying on and working through that transition. At 6:42, Betsy emailed me and said they was sorry what she'd heard, but also on Joe's email, he said that he reached out and talked to Betsy and let her know what he and I had talked about, which was the interim town manager. And so I assumed that he told her that I was going to reach out to Glenn and Steve, but I don't really know, to be honest. But by 6:49, Betsy let me know that he had talked to her, and she emailed to say she would help with the search. Then at 9:20, the same day, 7:34, and I want to quote this so that, people know I saved emails, or a couple. Congratulations, triple exclamation. You two just ruined everything for Raymond, triple exclamation. Joe Crocker makes this town a community. Neither one of you have done shit for this town, but pushed out the good people, pushed out someone that has pulled it together. You are the ones that said you wanted to know why good people are leaving. The ones that left before don't even come close to what Joe Crocker has done. That's quite a criticism. When you had the code officer who, with the help of Chris, got all the lawyer fees on that situation on the lake officer. Alex did a hell of a job for us. So did Cerise. But anyway, pat yourself on the back for winning the Morons of the Year award. Pathetic. 7:34 the same day. As she said, she talks to Joe. That had quite an impact, I'm sure. I'm sure that he didn't want to hang around knowing this was going to happen. Now, the next time I heard anything from a town manager was 9/28/25 from Glenn. Just to recap, my understanding that you received a 30-day notice from your town manager and are interested in potentially exploring interim services while the Select Board considers the next steps. Notice it says, until the Select Board considers the next step. This is simply an option, something that leadership does. They try to find solutions when all shit is, falling apart. I attached a draft agreement for the board to review. It outlines a one-year arrangement for the interim services with the understanding that your town manager wishes to step into a support role temporarily and be reappointed at the conclusion of the 12 months. I also kept the agreement flexible should the board need assistance. I would need a 30-day notice. I'm happy to stop in on Friday to meet with Joe or anyone else, as that's typically my day off. Please let me know how you would like to proceed after you have a chance to discuss this with the town manager and your board. Clearly, I let him know that it was an option that we're looking at. Clearly, he knew I had to go back to the board. I was just excited he was still interested, if you want to know the truth, and the agreement's attached. That meeting on the 23rd, I did call up and ask him if I could meet with him on the 23rd, on Tuesday, not Monday, because he didn't want to work Monday, and I wasn't meeting anymore on Mondays because, as he said, he didn't want to be there. I did reach out to Kayla and say, I'm going to go in and talk to him about the church. I'm going to talk to him about the a couple other things. I didn't actually tell her everything, but this is a preliminary town report that we received for the last budget process. And this is what they normally look like, you know, when they do their job and finish. Now, this is the only one in the last, since I've been fire chief in '99, that I've ever seen with this on the cover. This report meets the statutory requirements. It is being made available to meet the required timeframes. A more comprehensive report will be forthcoming. That was just before she stepped down.
I did that.
I know. I didn't know at the
I
time.
didn't step down.
I did-
I did that report.
Mal, please, you're out of line. Let me finish.
All right, fine, but tell the truth.
I am telling the truth. This is what we got. And I didn't know you did it, to be honest with you. So, please, you had your chance at the mic. Please let me finish. So either way, this is the audit. And to be honest, I think the citizens were expecting the other one. In fact, someone brought it up, and I didn't ask them to. It wasn't anything I conjured up. So as I'm laying this out, I'm trying to show things. For example, this 2023, this is an open cover letter for the budget process, something else we hadn't seen in a while. And it lays out the gross increase, why it happened, the amount that it would, the estimate, next tax reevaluation, how much more we picked up on town evaluation for taxes and revenues, lays out what we're going to use for revenues. It's pretty comprehensive so that the budget committee and the select board would know exactly what's happening in the budget process.
Okay.
So that is just an example of some of the changes I've seen since then. So am I overstepping my bounds to request some of the things since then that we didn't receive when the budget process was going on? Anyone who watches that budget process would see paperwork coming in and being handed to us to say, take the other one out, put this one in, there was mistakes in this one's been updated. I said at the meeting at the school, I've never seen anything like this. I was chief for 13 years, did all those budgets, was on the budget committee 3 years, never saw anything like this. Joe's taken over after this. And this isn't everything. This is just something to explain that, yeah, we're not perfect. We're really not. But everything I've done is to try to catch up and help. And I think when Joe shook my hand, he was sincere when he said he would do this, that he wanted to come back in that next role. He didn't see it as insulting. I think he saw it as help. And I can't speak for what happened between 2:30 and 7:30 when we were told how Joe was much more valuable than the seven people we lost. You know, you got to all make up your own mind with that. But I'm opposed to this because I didn't even know what the reasons we were being told. Those emails were all asked for after the recall petition was done, or during it. They didn't come in with all those emails. They went and requested them afterwards. So the reason that the recall happened was probably Joe. I'm not going to say it wasn't. But let me tell you, I thought he was good enough. And actually, I talked to Glenn once about it after he worked with Glenn, and he told me he thought he could make it too. This was not anything that a person could come into and clean up without having some experience, and not even the ability on the that July meeting or August meeting where he was talking about the public safety, the board voting for it. So I did hire a lawyer. You know why? Because I called our town a lawyer and said, look, these reasons are vague. I don't even know what I'm being accused of. I need some help here. And they said, we don't get involved with recalls. You know, we'd sub it out. I said, you don't want to help me? Glenn got the response for them when I asked for it. So I understand they don't want to be involved with recall. It's political, you know. So I reached out to, I went through the telephone directory on Google. And I saw Kristen Collins. I don't know who she was, but I liked what I read, so I called her up and asked if she'd represent me. And she sent an opinion to the select board, town manager, and the lawyers on why, as the person who represented Limerick, she lost the case and why Raymond's ordinance would be defeated, the recall. And after, our lawyers didn't even call her to talk to her or anything else. She said, I don't know why they didn't call, but I got to tell you, you might as well call up Scott. And she sent me his information, and I hired Scott. And Scott told me, yes, your ordinance is so much like Limerick's. This is a slam dunk. And he's going to explain this reason, because I think everyone should hear it when I'm done. But I've listened to 2 months of people calling me saying, did you see this on social media? 2 months. That's incredible. No one should have to endure that. I wouldn't have done that to the person I ran against, although some people think I ran just to get him out. I didn't. I ran for change. And all right, I'm not perfect. But I heard I was going to fire Nathan and Sue and the finance director. I told Glenn when he got here, I said, I don't care about the finance. I just want my expense and revenue sheets. If you can work with them, good. That's all I said. Told him Melanie was probably the most competent clerk I'd seen. That wasn't a criticism. I went in there twice or 3 times to have cars registered and to meet with Glenn, and I had nothing but respect and pleasantry with the people that work in there. Maybe they're faking it, I don't know. But I got to tell you, I'm not that kind of person. I'm the kind of person who treats people the way I want to be treated. And yeah, I wear my sleeve my heart on my sleeve. Kayla has done nothing but try to help. When I called her up and asked her if she could be at the meeting, I wasn't sure she could make it. I was glad she could make it, but quite honestly, I'm more appalled at that than anything else at 4 months here. And I could go on, but I'm not going to, because I know I'm going to get tired of people get tired of hearing all the problems. I don't want the people to know how bad it is. It's not good for the town. It's not good for anything. So I'm going to ask Kayla if she wants to speak, or if she wants to pass, I'd like to have the attorney come up and speak, and then I'll turn it over to anyone who wants to support or doesn't want to support.
I have an opportunity to speak after.
Yes.
I'll take it then.
All right. She chose to speak at the end, which she has a right. Scott, would you come up and just explain where we are and why?
Happily. My name is Scott Dolan. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Petrocelli, Martin & Haddow, and I represent Dennis Morse. I'm going to talk to you not about the allegations or the responses to those allegations. I'm going to talk to you about the town ordinance and state law. And although I represent Mr. Morse, much of what I say may also affect Ms. Gonzalez, but I don't represent her. I'm going to start by reading you, and let me be clear up front, that this recall election is illegal. I'm going to start by reading you a letter that I wrote to the town attorneys, to the town manager, to the board of selectmen, and the town clerk. This is a letter dated December 1, which would have been the day before the public hearing was initially scheduled, before it was delayed due to the snowstorm. It says, "Dear town officials," this is December 1st, is sent by email, a letter sent by email to those folks. "Dear town officials and attorneys for the town of Raymond, my law firm and I represent Dennis Morse, chairman of the Board of Selectmen, who was duly elected by the people of Raymond. Please accept this letter on behalf of Mr. Morse in advance of the public hearing on the recall petition action brought against him by Teresa Sadak. I will also attend the public hearing, currently scheduled for December 2, though the pending snowstorm could be an issue, to make these remarks in person and answer the questions that you or the public may have. Please be advised that holding a recall election against Mr. Morse would be illegal. State Statute 30-A MRS Section 2505 subsection 9 expressly prohibits bringing a recall petition action against an elected municipal official, such as Mr. Morse, unless specific crimes have been committed. The subsection states, with a subhead, limitation of recall. An elected official may be the subject of a recall petition under this section only if the official is convicted of a crime, the conduct of which occurred during the official's term of office and the victim of which is the municipality. That is, because Mr. Morse is an elected official and has not been convicted of any crime in connection with his elected position as selectman, he cannot be recalled. It is against the law to hold a recall election against him. Although the state statute 30-A MRS Section 2505 does allow for municipalities to establish their own ordinances that may supersede the specific provisions of the statute. Your elected official recall and appointment ordinance adopted on June 5, 2012, which I'll refer to as just the ordinance here and after, says nothing about the substantive standard for recall of an elected official. Your ordinance also makes no reference to the state recall statute, 30-A MRS section 2505. More specifically, your ordinance makes no reference to the limitation of recall set forth in section 2505 subsection 9 that bars recall unless an elected official has been convicted of a specific crime. The only provision in your ordinance that is even possibly related to the standards of recall is the opening paragraph, which states, and I quote, "The affidavit must state the name and the office held by the official sought to be recalled and must contain a statement of the reason or reasons for the proposed recall." And that's section 1 of your ordinance. That, however, is a merely procedural requirement of how the recall petition form must be prepared and does not address any substantive prerequisites for recall. This exact same question of law came up just 2 months ago in a failed recall action in the town of Limerick, in which several members of the Limerick Board of Selectmen tried to have the town treasurer recalled. In that case, my firm and I represented the town treasurer at both the municipal board level and in the ultimate court lawsuit. Limerick's recall ordinance contains nearly identical language to your town's ordinance. Limerick's states, and I quote, "The petition shall state the name and office or offices of the municipal official whose removal is being sought and a general statement of the reasons why such a removal is desired." And I had attached a copy of the Limerick ordinance to my letter so that those officials could read it. I wrote a very similar letter to this one in the Limerick case as I am writing here to you in Raymond. I informed the Limerick town officials and their attorneys that the recall action against the town treasurer was illegal because she had not been convicted of a crime. I told them that if they did not cancel the recall election against the town treasurer, that I would have no choice but to file a lawsuit in court. They did not listen, and I was forced to file a lawsuit. The Superior Court agreed with me and issued an emergency order canceling the Limerick election. After the election was canceled, the Limerick selectmen gave up their attempted recall. They settled the lawsuit against them by agreeing to extend the emergency injunctive order against Limerick for the remainder of the town treasurer's elected term. The judge in that case accepted that settlement as an order of the court that remains in effect now. And two of those Limerick selectmen who tried to have the town treasurer recalled ultimately resigned in the aftermath of their defeat in court. And I included copies of the 2 orders of the court to my letter. One was the injunction canceling the election, and the other was the order of the court afterward accepting the extension of that injunction for the duration of the town treasurer's elected term. The attorneys for the town of Raymond have issued their own legal opinion on this matter to the Raymond town manager, who's sitting over here. In their opinion letter, they acknowledge the Limerick case, but nonetheless give the following advice. And I quote from their letter. "The town's ordinance provides a mechanism in which registered voters of the town can seek to recall from office an elected official of the town. The ordinance does not include any limitation on the reasons for a recall, other than it includes a requirement that the notice of intention that must be filed to initiate a recall must include a statement of the reason or reasons for the proposed recall. By allowing a petitioner to state a reason or reasons for the proposed recall, the ordinance authorizes a recall based on any reason and is not limited to the criminal behavior provision of the statute." And I included a copy of the town lawyer's letter to my letter. That's, in my opinion, those lawyers from Bernstein Shore, their letter gets it dead wrong. And that's not just my opinion. It's also the legal opinion of the Superior Court Justice Darcy McElway, who presided over the Limerick case. In her order to cancel the Limerick recall election, Justice McElway ruled, the Limerick ordinance specifies no grounds for recalling a town official. A statute regarding recall of municipal officials states, this quote, "except as otherwise provided by the municipality's ordinance or charter, an elected official of a municipality may be recalled from office pursuant to this section, and that's 30-A MRS section 2505. And the judge continued her order. Section 2505 provides a procedure for initiating a recall election, which is similar to the town's recall ordinance in many respects. In contrast to the town's ordinance, however, Section 2505 specifies the grounds for which an official may legitimately be recalled. An elected official may be subject of a recall petition under this section only if the official is convicted of a crime, the conduct of which occurred during the official's term of office, and the victim of which is the municipality. And that's her quoting from 30-A MRS section 2505 subsection 9. And the order from the court continues. Although the town could, pursuant to its home rule authority, enact an ordinance providing that a town official may be recalled for incompetence, the town's ordinance contains no such provision. Because the town failed to exercise its home rule authority to specify the grounds for which an official may be recalled, Section 2505 controls. And she cites to that section and quotes it, except as otherwise provided by the municipality's ordinance or charter, an elected official of a municipality may be recalled from office pursuant to this section. And she goes on, accordingly, the town may only hold a recall election if the official is convicted of a crime, the conduct for which occurred during the official's term of office, and the victim of which is the municipality. The court concludes that plaintiff, in that case it was the town treasurer, established a likelihood of success on the merits. And that was what she wrote, issuing an injunction canceling the election. The lawyers for the town of Limerick tried to make the same arguments as your lawyers are now doing here in Raymond, and the court ruled against them. If the town of Raymond persists in following that advice and schedules the recall election, I wrote this before the town clerk actually scheduled the recall election, I will have no choice but to file a lawsuit next to stop that election, just as I was forced to stop the Limerick recall election. I'm confident that Mr. Morse will prevail in that lawsuit. And there's still time that something else could happen here. We don't have to go through with a lawsuit. There's still an opportunity to halt the election, postpone the election, or to delay it to allow the attorneys time to get another opinion from the court. And I'm available to answer any questions people may have.
Wait, guys, we're not the mic. No, these guys are talking.
Anyone else who want to speak against the recall? Peter? All right. Well, this is for anyone who wants to speak against the recall. Tom, then Abel? Oh,
I want to speak against the recall.
oh, that's what I meant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm
All
sorry.
right. Sorry.
It's been a rough
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, it's been a rough day. So, your attorney kind of stole a lot of my thunder, but I would remind or ask, Derek, did you get an email from me in October citing the fact that I felt that the current ordinance was inadequate?
Yes.
Oh, Chris Hanson? Now he must have fallen asleep. Kayla, did you get that email?
Yes.
Yeah. Dennis, did you get that email?
did.
Okay, all right. I beat you. Yeah. So I am opposed to the recall of both the select board members identified in this notice of intention. What I'd say is that I don't believe that either Dennis Morse or Joe Crocker, or for that matter, Teresa Sadak, are in any jeopardy of being made or being entered into sainthood. So I'd say that right off the bat. And we all kind of make mistakes, and I understand that. But my comments pertain to the inadequacy of the current Raymond recall ordinance. While our current ordinance is legal according to our town attorneys, my research informs me that, in fact, it's far from adequate in safeguarding our free and fair election process from the abuses of partisan politics. I'll pause there for a second. Let's think about the primary players in this. Partisan politics, which have no place in municipal government. Personal grievances, retribution, unsubstantiated social media posts, or hearsay accusations. You can appreciate the inadequacy in our recall ordinance when compared to the Maine state model, which basically states, as the lawyer has just said, that you have to be convicted of a crime. I would add that the state statute is a little bit, in my research, lacking there. It really should say indicted or convicted of a crime, because as we know, the courts are not really all that expeditious. And so waiting for someone to be convicted and not being able to remove them from office is a little bit difficult. But I would say if there's enough evidence for an indictment through the court system, that might be a reason for a recall as well. But that's just my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, I'm glad to say. As far as the state model, it limits grounds for recall to conviction of a crime as determined by the formal rules of evidence. Raymond's current ordinance has, as it was stated, no limitations on reasons for recall. Recently, many Maine municipalities have recognized this inadequacy in their recall ordinance and have revised their documents to provide guardrails against abuse, including listing allowed reasons for recall, requiring supportive evidentiary documentation, and raising the required number of signatures on a recall petition, and specifying the length of time an elected official must serve in office before they are subject to recall, allowing subjective reasons for recall based on personal feelings, opinions, and individual experiences rather than by evidence-based data on personal feelings, opinions, and individual experiences rather than by evidence. It does a disservice to our free and fair elections, and that is my primary concern here. I urge the selectmen, and I have, to make revisions to the ordinance a high priority before the town enters a cycle of anti-democratic actions. And what I would say is this: I'm a little envious of anyone who is unaware of what's going on locally, statewide, and nationally, because they're blissfully ignorant. And I am envious of that. This ordinance was written in 2012. I'd ask anyone in this room, has anything changed politically in this country since 2012? I'm not attempting to change any minds here tonight. The only mind you can change is your own. At least that's what I believe. The Board of Selectmen bylaws specifically states that the formal rules of evidence shall not apply to a public hearing. This was stated early on by the chair when he was going through the second agenda item. So I guess what I would say is that all of this so-called evidence that we've heard tonight, it has no bearing as far as the law is concerned. You see, the state model says that you have to be convicted of a crime. And by being convicted of a crime, it means it's gone through the rules of evidence. I would assume that Ms. Sadak or the town clerk reading in those letters, that I would assume that they're not basically certified letters. They've been notarized. They've been notarized. Yeah,
I didn't make them up on my own.
They've been notarized.
All right, that's not,
Yeah, fine.
please.
You're right.
That's-
You're right. I'm not engaging.
That's enough
in
comments from the crowd.
that. Yeah. At a recent Board of Selectmen meeting, two supporters of this recall, who claim to have legal expertise, made these statements, quote, "If it walks like a duck." The other statement was, "Where there's smoke, there's fire." You won't find either of those terms or expressions contained in the formal rules of evidence. In my opinion, they exemplify the misguided thinking that brings us here tonight. I want to remind the citizens of Raymond of the events of April 8, 2024. At that Board of Selectmen meeting, Teresa Sadak and the chair and vice chair of the then Board of Selectmen changed the recommendation by the only other elected group in this town, which is the Budget Finance Committee. They did it on a technicality as far as how the vote was taken, but it was a unanimous vote. There was an emergency meeting of the Budget Finance Committee that brought out this room full of individuals that were outraged that the Select Board,
Peter, please.
that the Select Board would change the decision, unanimous decision of the Budget Finance Committee from we do not recommend the $6.2 million bond for the Public Works building to, they changed it to no recommendation. But there was such an uproar on the part of the town because of this political move to deny us our rights, and these are all individuals that are now supporters of this recall, which is denying us the free and fair elections that we deserve. So I guess I would say that the citizens of Raymond need a fair shake in this. I would recommend that as soon as possible, whatever select board we have, review and revise our current inadequate recall ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Abel? Please, just keep moving through.
I'm Abel Bates, 55 Stark Cove Road. I've lived in Raymond for over 50 years, and I have, for this reason right here, stayed as far away from local politics as I could. I don't very often get up to speak, but, you know, I've known Dennis, and I've worked with Kayla, and one thing I can tell you is they are looking for the best interest of the town. Absolutely against whatever number one was in that list. And I've heard a lot of animosity here. I've heard a lot of personal issues getting expressed. And I've also heard Scott say that this whole thing ought to be thrown out, and it's only going to cost the town a lot of money to pursue it any farther. I think everybody ought to take a big, deep breath, just put your personal feelings aside, and get back to work in the town, because it sounds like we've got a lot of things to solve. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Tom?
I'd like to start by quoting Truman. The buck stops here. Believe it or not, trivia.
Do you say your name, please?
Sorry. Tom Ewiger, 308 Cape Road. Just a bit of trivia. The buck was not a buck, a dollar. It was the buck when you were playing poker. Whoever had the buck in front of him was the dealer. That's why the buck stopped there. I've been in business all my life. I started a business from square one, and I finally sold it to a public corporation. If I had to listen to every whining person in my organization and every complaint, we would have gone bankrupt. I truly believe that Dennis has the best interests of this town in mind. I think if you want to get something done, sometimes you have to crawl over people, go to the source, and get the information you need in order to make a proper decision, in order to push the town forward. I don't think there's anything that Dennis has done which has been vindictive or vitriolic or for any other reason but to try and do the best for the interests of this town. And being in a leadership role, I've been a chairman and a president of a company for many, many years. I know the travails that you go through when you're trying to grow a business. I know some of the PR that fights you all the way, human resources and this and that. But in the end effect, you've got to prevail if you are the number one guy. If you are the president, the buck stops with you, and you got to make the decisions.
Thank you. Anyone else? Grace?
Grace Levitt, Levitt Road. I am opposed to both the recall of Select Board Member Morse and Select Board Member Gonzalez. Having attended in person nearly every Select Board meeting for at least a year and a half, viewing the few that I did not attend, I've directly witnessed evidence that contradicts the supposed reasons for these recalls. Mr. Morse has made it clear many times he cares deeply about our town and always puts the best interests of the town first. You'll see examples at several meetings, especially beginning with June of this year. I have not once witnessed any evidence to support any of the accusations. Mr. Morse sought answers regarding town finances and actions of past select boards. He's watching out for our town's finances, which is of the utmost importance to us all. I hope whatever transpired under past select boards has been cleared up or will be cleared up soon. Mr. Morse has made it very clear he's striving for greater transparency and improved communication, all for the betterment of the town. Ms. Gonzalez did an excellent job co-chairing the Comprehensive Plan Committee, serving on the Jordan Small Visioning Committee, and many times on these, and during her short time on the Select Board, I've witnessed her contributing in ways that definitely put the best interests of Raymond first. Not once has there been any indication of evidence supporting the accusations. In June of 2024, Mr. Morse received 461 votes, well over the number his opponent received. This past June, in a four-way race for 2 seats, Ms. Gonzalez received the second highest number, 328, 100 more than the third candidate and more than the fourth. The number of signatures on these petitions is far, far less than the number of votes either Mr. Morse or Ms. Gonzalez received. When voting,
Stop.
I hope people understand voting in favor means overturning elections, where many more voters supported these individuals. I hope you base your decision on facts. Certainly, it is important at any organization I've ever worked in to seek a resolution to any problem at the lowest level possible. The bylaws for the Select Board have a process for hearing complaints and working to resolve issues. The person who began this recall served on the Select Board for 12 years, and I would hope would be familiar with the bylaws. It sounded like they were. Additionally, 2 former Select Board members who signed the petitions also should be familiar with the bylaws. And there were many other avenues to seek remedies to some of the issues that have been listed here today. I would have hoped that that would have been the process to follow, rather than something as extreme as calling for a recall election. I've witnessed behavior by past Select Board members that was definitely disrespectful, and there have been actions taken by at least one past Select Board member that certainly divided this town. There's been no small number, as you've heard when Dennis spoke, no small number of turnovers in positions in our town under our past Select Boards. Turnover in CEOs, Finance Director, Human Resources Director, Library Director, I'd forgotten that one, along with town managers. We don't know the reasons why. We'll never know the reasons why. Who knows what transpired? The timing of this particular election, if it is deemed to be legal and goes forward, December, most people are celebrating a variety of holidays, busy spending time with their families and friends, visiting out of town, maybe taking a trip. They're not focused on an election that's 2 days before the new year instead of in November or June, the usual election times. And I understand the time constraints and why it had to be set for that date. But there are a number of Raymond residents also who spend the colder months out of state. I don't blame them one bit on a day like today. They voted in June. Are they even aware there's an election now happening in December? Yes, it's on them to be aware and stay in touch. I realize that. But still, it seems really poor timing for a real fair decision if we go forward with this. What is the cost of this measure? What is the cost of the staff time that has had to deal with the request for petitions, to certify the signatures, set up an election, prepare ballots, conduct the election? That's quite a bit of taxpayer dollars as well. I do believe this select board currently in place inherited a number of issues from the past. From past select boards, past employees, I don't know, but a number of issues. And I appreciate the efforts that so far to try to clear those up. I do believe that Dennis and Kayla are doing a terrific job in trying to work towards that. And as well as the others on the select board, I appreciate the work that they do. I am really sorry that Dennis and Kayla are being subjected to this. I do feel it's very, very unfair and certainly not in the best interest of the town. So whatever the outcome of this election, again, is illegal, what will we all do going forward? What will we all do to bring a sense of community back? And part of the reason I've been at select board meetings is wanting to work on that. We have a potential for a community center coming into place. Not sure what the cost will be, but that will be happening. It's really kind of nice to be at a town meeting. I just wish it were a different reason and a regular town meeting in June like we used to have. But in any case, I encourage all others to join me in voting no on this recall. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Sean? I'll get you next.
Sean McKillop, 84 Main Street. Let's talk about the church, because the question was, why is the church a target? Earlier this year, the previous select board brought about a vote to lease that building. The chair of the select board that time is also the treasurer of that church. He didn't make that knowledge public, and he didn't recluse himself. Somebody who was against it, not me, but drove by, saw the work being done and called it in. Not putting the best interest of Raymond first. That sounds to me like not putting the best interest of Raymond first. He was called out on it, there were comments about it, they ignored it, and they went ahead and voted it through anyway. That's the issue with the church. As far as budget finance being put on this recall, I'm surprised that we weren't. We've been a target ever since we said no to that Public Works garage. I'm on the Public Works Garage Committee now because I want to see some change in this town. This is an old school fight. It's got to stop. You guys are going to grow up. I've been in this town for 6 years. Whatever's going on predates all of this. Okay? I'm ready to move on. The town's finances are in dire trouble. Budget finance, we've been asking for this stuff for several years now. We haven't been getting answers. So to say that what we've been asking for in a short time frame is not true. I invite you all out to come out to budget finance meetings and listen, because we're here to serve. I'm here to serve. I don't need to do this. I don't need to be here tonight. I'd rather be with my son. I really do. But I feel so against what's going on because this is an old school fight. It's got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Brian?
Brian Walker, Rolfe Road. There's one of two reasons you're here tonight. Either you care about this town, which is really great news, or it's cold at your house and you knew it would be warm. So it's one of those two things. Right? I'm going to figure it's most of us are here because we care about this town. We care passionately about it, and we can have different opinions about that. I learned a lot today, and I've been on the Budget Finance Committee. I've been at a lot of meetings about the complexities of managing a town, not only from the town manager, but also the select board's role. And I think a lot of us probably underestimate what it takes to get things done. The challenge that this board has faced, and it's been mentioned, has been significant because it's including unwinding and correcting financial issues that have happened in the 23-24 fiscal year, of getting that fixed up so that we don't have surprises like there have been in terms of the tax increase and the like. It's been a situation that's been exacerbated by late audits that uncovered mistakes in accounting, et cetera. So I think what that led to was that sense of urgency that the select board feels, and specifically I'll talk about Dennis and Kayla, led to an intensity and a passion in terms of how to move things forward. And that led to some of the situations that were, outlined by Teresa. How do we go forward? We all care about this town. How do we move forward? I think I've seen, since there's been a change, a great deal of opinions expressed by this diverse select board, and in the recent past, a greater growing town engagement in what's going on. I think that's a positive. I'm very concerned that part of what I heard today was where the town employees are in this entire process, and I think that's one thing that we really need to think about. But I'll leave it at that. I do believe that the benefit of the doubt, could some things have been done differently? Yes, I think so. But I think both the chairman and vice chair are working very, very hard, and I do believe that they have at the core of what they're thinking about the best interest of the town and trying to move the town forward in a way so that it is the place that we all want to be and come out on a cold night. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Bob Wallace, 36 Pulpit Rock Road. Couple things come to mind as I've heard everybody speak. Number one is we do have a human resource manager, wherever she went. We do have a human resource manager, and that human resource manager should take information from the bottom up, not just from the top down. Okay? I heard somebody speak over there every day. Well, if it's every day, then you've got a legal right.
Please, address everything to the, just address the crowd, don't interact with each other, please.
The other thing I'd like to bring up, I didn't know Joe Crocker very well. He did a great job in Parks and Rec. We don't know how he was going to do as town manager, but we're not going to know because he resigned, as did the other town managers before him. And I hope that Glenn takes this information and works for us and the select board that is in place, because I worry that if this recall does go bad for these two individuals, that the three people that are left on the select board are going to be able to do what the town needs to have done in time for us to continue to move on. I think we'll go backwards. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, go ahead. You go next. Pardon me. Sorry, I don't know everyone's name, but
John Facella, Loon Lodge Road. I listened to all of this. Like others here, I had other things to do. I think it's a sad day in Raymond. I moved here some time ago, and we really like this town. It's small. You only have to look at what's happening in Wyndham to see what you don't want. And by the way, that goes for the politics too, because if you've been reading the papers over the last few years, they've had their share of negative discussions and so forth. So I think it's a sad day, and a number of others before me have said, where do we go forward? Well, first of all, we have to think very carefully, as the lady before me said, if we're going to overturn the vote of the citizens. And that's what this is actually about, overturning a vote. We should go into this very well prepared to substantiate our case. I heard about this. I went, looked at the electronic bulletin board, said, go to the website. I went to the website. What did I find? 4 sheets of paper with these 4 allegations. Nothing else. I looked around. I couldn't find any of the evidence that Teresa provided. You talk about transparency. To me, then all of that information should have been presented and either copies available for everybody or posted on the website well in advance. So me, as a citizen, as a taxpayer, as a voter, I cannot analyze in any meaningful fashion what was said here. And I also harbor some severe reservations about a lot of the employees being upset. But when I first read this thing, I said, am I in a time warp? Is this about these two people, or is this about some prior administration? I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Next.
I'll keep it brief. Mark Meister, 12 Giselle. I won't speak on, there's a lot of emotion, and I think there's a lot of thoughts and things that are going on here. But ultimately, what I really think the town should think about is skill. And do we have the right skills in our select board, in our employees, in our department heads to run this town and manage the challenges ahead? And I also ask everyone to look at themselves and say, am I at a point in my career, do I have these skills to execute against this agenda? We do have a lot of challenges in Raymond going forward. I can see from the budget finance meetings, from these town discussions. And how do we take this emotion way down and move to content, skill, data? I professionally do trouble program turnarounds in my professional career, and it's always about how you move to what is the right outcome we're trying to drive. And so we can go through this recall, we can go through all these processes, or we can figure out, do we have the right skills as a town to execute against a future agenda? The world is changing, the town is changing. How do we protect what makes Raymond special, but also understand we are seeing a change in the world? And we have to start moving in that model instead of living in this emotional cycle of everyone going back and forth. And I would encourage the town to really think about that as they make these decisions on this recall.
Thank you. Next.
David Brown, Tenny Hill Road. And I was jotting down some notes during some of the presentations, and I don't want to be too repetitive. I wanted to start with thanking the chair for letting people speak the way they have, and not banging the gavel too much. I think I would have had to if I'd been in your position, because there's been a lot of side talking and other things. I do want to comment on frankly, on the other two selectmen, because one of your directions was you will not answer questions. And when they were prompted, they were answering questions during the presentation, the initial presentation. I thought that was undermining your position as chair. And I can say that kind of stuff would not have happened under the two previous board chairs. And I think everybody here knows that if they've attended any meetings. Those people ran things with an iron fist. I know that they wouldn't let you even have access to things. You Dennis, you couldn't be on the committee that chose Joe Crocker. They created their own committee without using the entire board, which is not, I've read the bylaws for the board, and the chair of the board has very limited powers, and yet those two previous ones were exercising powers way above what they have in the bylaws, in terms of a heavy level of control. And related to that control, my understanding is that Joe Bruno himself was in the town office quite often. Some of the allegations we've heard imply that a chair and a vice chair aren't even entitled to speak to town employees unless they have the entire board present. And I don't think that's in the bylaws. I don't think that's practical whatsoever. Can you imagine how you're going to come together, all five of you, to a select board meeting, never having spoken to anybody or to each other before? That's the implication that we get from these accusations. That's not how things work. I was going to start by saying, I grew up in a small town in Maine, much smaller than this, attended town meetings as a child, then lived in Lisbon for many years and attended a lot of town meetings there, observed how those select board run at the time. Lisbon now has a manager, but they were run by select boards, and those select boards did whatever they damn well pleased. If there was money, land that had been foreclosed on and the town owned it, they sold it to their buddies for $1. That kind of thing goes on in select boards, and anybody who's thinking that this is some kind of someone referred to Mayberry, with Andy Griffith. The real world isn't Mayberry with Andy Griffith. It's people who agree and disagree, and there's a lot of work to be done. So, I wanted to go back to someone else that mentioned that the apparently these facts, these emails and things that were gathered, practically everything that was presented as evidence in the initial presentation seem to have been gathered after the fact, after all of the hoopla, the Facebook chatter had started, the petition had been started. And so there wasn't evidence that people had in hand. And I'll refer to that too. I have something here it's a Facebook page that happened, I think, maybe in October. One of the private town Facebook pages. And one of our other select persons actually posted on there in a conversation with one of the people who are here tonight. And because at that time, an impression among the voters, among the few people who even know about this, was that there was some problem with this select board, and specifically two of you, that two other town managers had already supposedly, resigned, whatever. And one of the select board members said, I can only speak for me personally, but I would love for an investigation on why all the town managers have retired and resigned as well. And went on from there. That was adding fuel to the fire when that person knows bloody well what really went on. I think that's really embarrassing. And I'll point to something I pointed to in a recent select board meeting. Two documents related to one of those town managers. One was a transition agreement that was signed by Joe Bruno it was signed by Don Willard on August 30 of 2023, signed by Joe Bruno in September. Then, and that had a whole lot of detail about Don Willard not being able to speak about things and might denigrate the town, might say something, he couldn't say something negative, all this kind of stuff. Then when he actually resigned in January 1st or whatever of that, then there was this severance and release agreement. It has a lot of detail that was written by the board, we'll say, and it put Don in a very bad position. And my understanding about the situation with Don was he went out on medical leave early in the year, and then when he was ready to come back, and let's face it, it's a desk job. It's not like, I mean, you could come in on crutches, you could do this job. You could come in in a bed and do this job as long as you've got the brain to do it. It's a brain job and a talking job to be a town manager. And he was sent home at that time. Meanwhile, so he fought that. He wanted his job back. And the town settled with him and came up with this agreement in which he was told he couldn't say anything negative about the town. The town also can't say anything negative, but it's different when you're a private citizen, as Don is. He's one of our neighbors who had worked for the town for over 20 years. And this cost the town a lot of money that people don't know about that probably, but that's part of the budget problem, is that we had to pay his expenses, his legal expenses, because he did fight and so that's the kind of thing that's been going on under previous boards that maybe people aren't aware of, and when they pick on this board, they ought to be doing a lot more of reading, watching old meetings, asking some good questions about this stuff. You've talked about the church ad nauseum. I have said before too that watching the select board meetings and the finance board committee meetings about the money, and it's about money, it's about power, this whole thing. There's money that needs to be resolved, and there are people in the past who may have responsibility for that, but we can't accuse anybody of that. But I watched those people unable to answer the questions about the budget, and they were some simple questions. What is the percentage that the taxes are going to go up was one of the questions, and they acted like they had been needed that advance notice, and very basic question. Okay, I'll move on. Town report. You held up a town report. We still do not have an official town report. I haven't seen that. we've been here for over 26 years.
That's repeating.
I've not seen that. Oh, okay, I'll let you, let somebody else speak, but, did want to mention the advertising for the hearing. I was watching real time, waiting for advertising to happen for the December 2 meeting. It was not in the paper. And the ordinance says that it will be advertised in the same manner as ordinance discussions, whatever. It doesn't say specifically, but as ordinances are advertised. Did not happen. I mean, how long do you usually have before we discuss and then vote on an ordinance? A long time. So the day before Thanksgiving, a little post was made with no information. Friday, that was developed further. Saturday, that was developed further. Still really not fully there. Eventually, they did get an ad in the Wyndham Eagle, but that ad was not in before December 2. It was in, as you mentioned, the date that actually went in. It was officially the last Friday. So I have to wonder why that was even the way it was. Thank you.
Anyone else? You want to go?
Kyle Bancroft, 244 Meadow Road, also owner of East Shore Tavern in Raymond. I will say, with my personal experience, I've been coming in front of the board for the last 5 years to renew liquor license, dance license. I found you guys to be professional, easygoing. That hasn't always been what I've found in the past. There's been numerous times here that I've been attacked for my business, how I run it, perspective given without evidence from, disgruntled employees. I actually have my liquor license denied by a previous board that Ms. Sadak sat on, ultimately to be overturned at appeal and have the state AG come back and say that it was misinterpreted, misapplied, and it should have never happened. So I just want to speak to my personal experience with you folks has been great. This back and forth, I expected to come in here today with a smoking gun. The way that this was kind of brought up and everything that was said around this, I thought for sure we would see some evidence of wrongdoing. And what I've seen is a bunch of feelings. It seems like the board is trying to clean up a mess that was created long before you guys stepped on. And in my opinion, the last two town managers, both good people, and I'm not speaking ill of who they are, of what they've done, they should not have been town managers. They were appointed, they were kind of shuffled in, but if you don't have the education behind you to do this kind of work, it's not a, hey, we'll get you up to speed and try to catch you up. I mean, I'd like to say that it's a great try to do, but the reality is we are in a mess right now. This all came to head during a Budget Finance Committee meeting, and that was stated in the email that Melanie had recited today from Joe. He was upset because a couple people put him on the spot and he wasn't able to answer critical questions that he should be able to answer. If he couldn't answer, Melody should have been here and she should have been able to answer it. But instead of looking at it as what it was, a question with answers that were required, it was met with, well, why are you picking on me? Or we need to rehearse this before we talk about it. That's foolish. I mean, the point that we've been in for the last 2 years with the mismanagement and the lack of proper town management has put us in a very bad position. And I can see as a board that you guys are trying to hash that out. And we need to put the feelings aside. It was a feel-good choice to hire Joe. Joe's a great guy. He did a good job with the rec department. It was a feel-good choice by the past board to have the town clerk of X amount of years, which I loved her. She would call me after every time I had a problem, and I had select board members like Teresa Sadik jump down my throat and say, hey, you know what? You didn't deserve what happened to you. You did a great job defending yourself, and just keep doing what you're doing. So Joe, my kids all are in the rec league. So I've had positive experiences with all these people, but that does not negate the fact that they weren't capable to right the ship and keep it going. And the day that the boiling point over with this meeting, there was 2 questions asked by Don Willard. Was the emergency fund applied to the budget process, and was the selectmen contingency fund applied when they factored in whether it was going to be a 4% increase or more? And these people could not tell what was factored in. That's a huge problem. I own a business. If I can't look at my numbers and factor it in pretty quickly where it is, what happened to it, and how I came up with it, that's a big problem. That's with a small business. I can't imagine with a town this size. So there's been a history of issues in this town. You know, it goes back more than 2 years. I think that the cover really came off a lot of these issues when Sue came in, and I think that Sue gave her best effort but realized that she wasn't up for the job. I think we wanted Joe to succeed, and we wanted him to be able to fill that void and get us out of that, but he didn't have the background to do that either. I mean, his background was in doing what he did best, was running the recreation department. So, you know, in closing, I will say that my experience with you folks has been positive. Everything that I've heard here today has been more feelings-based than they are fact. And I think that you guys have a big task ahead of you to try to clean up this mess that's happened over the last 2 years when we had this feel-good experience, or, you know, putting people in that weren't qualified to be there. So I could see why you and everybody else would take the approach to say, hey, we got to look at this, we have to look at that. I don't think it was to circumvent any kind of, if stuff wasn't getting done. I mean, if the town manager is worried about the website over our financial health, that's a huge issue for me. So I'll close in that and say, I appreciate your hard work. I do not support this recall effort, and I think that we need to get back to work on what really matters and get this town straightened out, get a town manager that knows what he's doing, and get the numbers on the paper and make sense of it all. Thank you.
Bruce? Have you seen?
And I just got back from the Caribbean and I'm warm. Bruce Tupper, 118 Valley Road. I'd like to start off just by thanking everybody who has come out, because everybody's opinions do matter, and this is the biggest crowd I think I've seen in this room ever in my life. So we've actually probably exceeded the fire loading. But to start off, I'd say, and everybody has stolen my thunder as well, but I would also say that I was surprised and saddened by Joe's resignation. But in the time that he has resigned until today, I've heard a lot of emotions and emotional accusations and possible, probable assumptions posted on Facebook, and I'm disappointed in that. I've even been called out as being the interim town manager when I did nothing more than walk into town office, offer help to get mail, to answer a phone, whatever, during the end of the tax season, the beginning of voting, and there was something else going on the end of the month, actually last week of the month. And instantly on Facebook, I was the interim town manager and being blasted about things that are untrue, and I don't appreciate that. So I think that what we have to do is get past our emotions. We need to move forward. Losing Joe was horrible, yes. Okay, we all said it. We know that. I like the guy. I don't always agree with my politicians, my legislators, and sometimes I get emotional and I'll even yell at the television, but I don't put out there and try to recall them, because I don't believe setting a precedence over those things is the right thing to do. This is very serious, and we should really be thinking about it, and not in terms of our emotions, because we like Joe and love to work with him. And I'm going to cut it short just because everybody has said everything I was going to say already, but I do believe that it's reasonable and even expected that a board provide oversight. I am asked tough questions as a department head every year and every day about my budget, what we need it for, and why. Every time there's a warrant, I get phone calls about what item was this, why do we need it, and I get asked those questions. It's not harassment. It's simple asking of questions for clarity to make sure that I'm doing my job right. And those questions are derived by the board very often. Well, they are, because they have to sign the warrant and it goes through the manager. And so I provide that clarity to them. I think that's important, and I do believe, knowing Dennis for over 20 years, working with him as a neighboring fire chief, mutual aid to my town, board selectman member, skipped the part in the middle where I actually worked for him for like 13 years, and as a board of selectmen member and a budget committee member. Dennis will ask the tough questions, and he wants an answer on it, and he will, and he's looking out for the best interest of the town, of the community, and I do know that deep down. Kayla, the same. I've known her for 10 years, and I know her to be a very compassionate and very professional person. And I do believe firmly that anything that she has done has been in the best interest of our community and moving forward. In closing, I did send Joe a text when I heard the news that he was leaving us. And it said, "I'm sorry to hear of your resignation. I enjoyed working with you very much. I have a lot of respect for you as a manager." This is the reply, in quotes. "Thanks, Bruce. I enjoyed working with you and your crew. I really appreciate the hard work it takes to do the job. I wish that I had more time here, but I do need more time with my family, to be present with my family. I'll still be around," and put a smiley face with it. So in closing, I ask that Joe's legacy not go down with a bunch of sea of emotions, but that we act accordingly and that we move this town forward in a positive manner. And let's stop the backbiting and bickering, and let's just move forward and become the great town that we used to be and that we can be again. Thank you.
Anyone else? Against? Go ahead, Frank.
Frank McDermott, 2 McDermott Road, Raymond, Maine. I lived in this town for almost 60 years. I moved here to be the teaching principal at Jordan Small School, and I was there 21 years. So I've seen a lot of things happen in this town over the time I've been here. This is the worst thing I have ever seen happen in this town. Who would run for public office in this town going forward? I can't think of many people who would. I'm against the recall, and I'm just going to say one thing. Think about this. If you were on a school board, and I know school boards because I spent 32 years in public education. I left Raymond. I went to Bonnie Eagle. I was the assistant superintendent. I was the superintendent over there. So I know how school boards work. If the superintendent of schools in Wyndham resigned tomorrow, do you think the school board would get together within a couple of days and say, hey, who's the most popular teacher in the school system? We're going to make that person superintendent. That's wrong for 2 reasons. First of all, stay in your lane. Do what you know. That teacher would not take that job because she or he would know they were not qualified, nor could they spend 6 months learning how to be a superintendent. Stay in your lane. If you need a town manager, hire a person who has the qualifications to be a town manager. I'm not speaking negatively against Joe. I like Joe. Thought Joe was a great guy. Did a great job as recreation director. You give me $1.5 million to spend, I could do a great job as a recreation director. But keep this in mind. You don't hire town managers because they're popular with the people they work for. Enough.
Thank you. Anyone else against? Seeing none. Anyone? I'm sorry, you didn't see your hand go up.
I'm for.
Yeah.
But that's okay, right?
No, you had your chance. You had your chance.
And Sean Carr?
Well, all right, go ahead. Go ahead.
He said no.
No, he hasn't spoke yet.
I haven't spoke yet, and he also said for or against in the beginning, so I believe you're probably not listening. My name's Sean Carr, Spilly Hill Road. I just want to remind everybody the facts that we've gotten from both sides. One side was Freedom of Information Act facts, where the other side, to my knowledge, it was hearsay, memories. You remembering dates, you're remembering this, and maybe this happened, maybe that happened. Am I correct? And to speak to a gentleman in the audience, confidentiality agreements are made every day. I don't know what the issue is, but of course I had several other things, but now I can't remember. All right, well, thank you.
Yeah. All right, let me remote word this. Anyone who is not against this, but has a neutral opinion of not for or against, who just wants to make a comment, you're welcome to come up. Thank you. I believe you've already spoke, by the way. Go ahead. Name?
Phil Hammett, Mountain Road. I'd just like to thank the board for their community service. That's pretty neutral, right? Thank you. And also, it's a good excuse to leave. Thank you all.
Well, I'll close the public comments now, and you've already spoken,
I
ma'am.
have a point of order question, please.
Sure, go ahead.
When your attorney spoke, he invited questions. So I have two that I feel are pertinent to the meeting. If
That's fine.
Appropriate.
Yes, it is.
One, my first question is the case for Limerick, that was based in York County, correct?
No, that was based in Cumberland County.
It is Cumberland County
The
there?
town treasurer lives in Cumberland County, so
Okay.
consequently we filed that case in Cumberland County. And there's a small pool of judges in Cumberland County.
Okay.
It's possible this case be heard by the same judge.
Excellent.
That
That's
was
a good
my
question.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
And my other question, and you can entertain it or not as chair, just asking his qualifications for his legal opinion. I mean, I've heard lots about Bernstein Shore over the years, and they have a great reputation, but I have never heard of his firm, so I was wondering about his qualifications for his opinion.
Sure.
Thank you.
And it wasn't just his, it was also Kristen Collins.
My law firm is Petrocelli Martin Haddow. I'm a partner there. The founding partner of my firm, Jerry Petrocelli, has taught at the law school here in Maine for 40 years. He taught civil procedure to most of the attorneys in Maine. I work side by side with him. We are a litigation specialty firm, and we have a high rate of success. We are a small firm that goes up against the big firms, and we often win. My background is prior to becoming a lawyer, I was a reporter for the Portland Press Herald. I covered the courts, and I have spent more time in courtrooms than most lawyers. And in this particular case, I have litigated these very laws and succeeded. So I think my record speaks for itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, at this stage, public comment is closed. and
Mr. Chair,
Did I miss someone?
did you want to check with Zoom?
Well, Kayla's been looking, and I haven't seen anyone.
I would ask Mel if anyone's raised their hand.
Mel, have you seen anyone?
No, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen hands either.
All right, at this stage, I'm going to ask, Chris, you still there? If you want to give your comments, or whether you just want to pass on it, I'm going to ask everyone on the select board to speak on opinions.
My comments are that I appreciate everybody speaking for and against, and I'm going to pass on the rest.
Thank you. Derek?
I'm going to pass.
Kayla? Would you like to go now?
Sure. I had a lot that I wanted to say, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get through it. But I realized last night, so I was volunteering again, even though I'm definitely overscheduled, that I love this town and I love the people in it. And this is not going to change me. I am still going to be the same person who is going to give so much more back. I've been honored to be elected. I would like to continue serving. I feel that I have more to offer at the town. But I do believe in democracy. I will accept any results of this recall effort. Perspective is an interesting thing. And I don't really want to hash over the details of the emails or any allegations. But I saw them a little differently, and I understand that. And I get how people, siblings raised in the same family with the same parents experience vastly different things. And I don't want to take away anyone's experience or say that it's not true. So if you feel you were harassed, then you were, because that was your feeling at that time. That doesn't mean that the person harassing you is feeling that they're doing that. So I think perspective is incredibly important and sometimes lost in the emotion because we all feel so strongly and we all care about each other so much. I also think two things can coexist at the same time. I very much like Joe. I never would have intentionally tried to push him out of his job. I have not gained a thing from running for office. Not one thing. Sorry. I feel like this is very unprofessional. Lastly, Glenn, I think that I have some concerns, obviously, over moving forward a pending lawsuit. I think it would be important that we speak with our legal counsel and maybe Dennis's legal counsel and gain some clarity on where we're going and what's next. So if you could try to make that happen, that would be great.
You're talking about a meeting with the two attorneys?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the select board needs to be aware of our town's opinion and legal opinion, considering what we've heard tonight. And I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. You know I'm going to say something. It's in my nature.
I'm sorry. I have one more thing.
No, I don't mind.
Apologize.
No apology.
I asked Glenn, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, I said, Glenn, you don't have to tell me. I don't know if this is appropriate or not. But if the town staff is really uncomfortable with me serving on this board, I don't want to be here because that defeats the purpose of it. I do care very deeply. And I was not aware that staff maybe felt this way. And I will definitely take that into consideration. Thank you.
I guess you can tell it's been emotional after 2 months of getting calls and people who don't even know you're saying the things that they were saying. There was sleepless nights, but I knew there'd be sleepless night. I kind of accepted it, and nothing like this, mind you.
Excuse me.
But since the posting on the board and in the paper, I have been shocked at the people that called with support saying, what's going on? And I said, well, you missed 2 months of it, but it comes down to the meeting tonight and the election. And one of them said, why'd you hire your own lawyer? I said, you know, our town lawyers, they don't want to get involved in recalls because of politics, and they know it's bad and it's negative. But I wrote something because I didn't know if I could say what she was thinking anyway. And I just want to, for the people who spoke against me and thought that I was this bad person who just couldn't wait to get rid of Joe, I did take him to lunch, and I did meet with him. And I bet you I wasn't in Sue Look's office more than 4 times the whole time I was on the select board. If it was more than that, then it was a short meeting, and I never closed the door. I didn't have to worry about those thin walls between the town manager's office and Melissa's assessing room. It's ridiculous. You don't have to holler. You can hear everything. But I want you to know something as a group and as a citizens and why I stepped forward and doesn't matter. I spent 13 years of my life as union president representing the interest of employees. Standing up for employees is a big part of who I am. I spent the majority of my career as a firefighter risking my life every day to protect other human beings, strangers. This is my character. The allegation by Teresa Sadek in the petition is untrue. There is some legitimacy. Please, I've listened to everyone. This is my character. I don't even have resentments. I think she's good at what she does when it comes to this stuff. I saw it 2011, 2012 with Charlie Lovett. I consider them an assault on my integrity and a character assassination, and they're libel and slanderous. I spent 13 years as your fire chief here. Stepping down in 2012, I was collecting $100 when I started for 3 or 4 years. And then when I got done, I was making $250. And I was working more in Raymond than I was in Portland. 3 years on, I did the job to serve my community. And because the EMS arrival time was 24 minutes. That was the arrival time back in 99, 2000. 24 minutes. And houses were going into the cellar. Not because the guys didn't care. It's because it was, the town wouldn't pay if the car you were driving had an accident going down the road. So everyone drove to the fire station and got on the truck to drive down these they drive by codes. So the first thing I did is gave everyone the EMS pack for their car and said, don't drive by another citizen who's sick or injured. I'll take it out of my pay, that deductible. But the policy when I got here was to drive to the station and get in the town truck or rescue. That's a fact. So instead of staying 3 or 4 years, I ended up being a little longer than I expected. The $250 at the end was no big deal, but Bruce knows this. When we had 3 flat budgets, I cut my pay to give him a raise. Our budget was that tight. That's a fact, too. I spent 3 years on the Budget Committee and now a year and a half on the Select Board. The stipend for these positions make them virtually volunteer. In fact, I donate my money to local areas in this town. Hawthorne House, Casco Raymond and Casco Historical Society eventually. I don't do it for the money. There's no power or glory for this in me. It's taken hours upon hours of hard work and invites criticism, believe me, more than people know, and attacks on my character anyway. There is no actual reward in my continue to do this work other than the knowledge that I'm doing the right thing and representing the majority of the people who chose me to represent the whole town. Although I will leave this matter to the lawyers to discuss the legal standards required to carry out the recall and election for the town officials, I would like to close with a couple things here. We, Kayla and I, really have nothing to gain, and win or lose. Once this recall is over, if we lose, I suppose we get our lives back. If we win, there's still a massive amount of hard work to do and people who don't want us here. But there was 300-something people that didn't want me here 2 Junes ago, or a June ago, whatever it was. This decision isn't about us, and it won't define us. It's about the course of the voters of this town, what they want to do and how they want it to go. Do they want to follow a path of truth, integrity, transparency, accountability, and fiscal responsibility, even with some of the mistakes we make? If the answer is yes, then vote not to recall us. And I'd say that the selection is the process is flawed. There's no doubt about that. But I can't even begin to tell you the second thoughts I've had for the last 2 months. It's incredible when you don't know people and you hear you're going to close down or cut the recreation department. When I ran on the Budget Committee to build a recreation department because of my grandkids, that I'm going to fire people because I don't like them or that they spoke against me. I've never done that, not in my whole life. In all this time, since 1979 when I was hired as a Portland firefighter, have I ever been written up except to get an award. I've never had a complaint filed against me. I heard about the finance director writing Kayla and I a letter. You know, I don't even know why. I complimented everything she said in the public, and there was rumors. I told Joe, let the rumors tell us what was said, by who, and I'll deal with them. The reality is, it's a small town. We all know each other. I actually stopped by the fire station. They used their machine to send an email, and now it's coming through the fire department. You know, it's crazy what I've had to see in this town, but I've never lost faith. When I was on Tasseltop Committee, I went down there because we rented the Tasseltop cabin. And I said, I'm going to get on the committee to see what I can do to help it. And I said, let's get them a mooring. Let's get them a table. We put our towels down there the first day we rented. We went down a half hour later, an hour later, they were gone. I said, get them their own area. There's nothing in it for me except to do what I think is best for this community and have a community that's what it was when I fell in love with it, when I was a firefighter, in the worst circumstances, the nicest people. That's who I found here in Raymond. We're still here. There's only a few people. And by the way, if anyone knows, there's a lot of unhappy people out there. And sometimes it's fun to get on that social media and just express some things. I'm probably stronger for the last 2 months than I was because I came into a couple meetings here exhausted and I probably looked foolish. But today I'm confident. I'm confident that the disagreement or the discussions we have on this board is good for the town. Chris doesn't always agree with me. He's done that. Last meeting, I had a vote to 1, 4-1 vote against me, wanting to change something. Does that sound like when we're getting along? 4 of them were. I think we are trying hard. But again, it's not going to define me. And I'm proud to have done the things I've done in Raymond, whether it's the fire department, whether it's Tasseltop, whether it's the 2004 comprehensive plan. Even that, I said to this plan that Kaler and so many other people, good citizens were on, the comp plan, was better than the one I was on. More open, more conversation, more concerns about the people. I talked to Sam the first time I met with him after I was on the board. He goes, I'm excited. I want to do something for the people. This is going to be a fun board. I've had people that work here that have said it's the best board they've seen. Those kind of compliments you don't get very often. I use them to get through the last 2 months. I'm proud to be a Raymond citizen. I'm in my forever home. I want to be here for a long time, and I want people to know the kind of person I am, regardless of the vote. And I thank you all for coming out, and I'm going to take a 15-minute recess so everyone can take a breath. Then I'm going to try to blow through the rest select board meeting. I'm sorry.
I need to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Kind of excited here, getting out.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second. All those in favor?